Okay, welcome to and alas for the Awful Sea one-shot. This is a game using the Powered by the Apocalypse system that takes place in the 19th century in the coastal towns and the dismal depression of quite a hard-going economic, I suppose, regression in the United Kingdom. We have two players with us tonight. Unfortunately, Gareth, who was going to join us, is having some problems with his internet. Hopefully you get that sorted out soon, Gareth. But we're going to push ahead with our two players. I'll let them introduce themselves and say a little bit about what they're thinking about playing. So first of all, we have Cheppy.
My name's Cheppy. I'm of no one of any consequence whatsoever. I am playing a female who may be a little bit more rugged than her normal kin than what people would want her to be. Probably a strong southern England upbringing is kind of what she looks like. Probably a little bit roughed and scratched along the neck. She is a Selkie, doesn't know it, more than likely. Got hit in the head. Also part of those scratches that she has. Had a concussion and now has forgotten that she is actually a Selkie. For people who don't know what that is, a seal who's a water spirit who takes off this, kind of like basically unzips their seal skin and becomes a woman. Sometimes falls in love and forgets that they used to be a seal. So, there you go.
Okay, thank you very much. And next we have Johannes.
Alright, so I'm Johannes, and playing probably like I'm poor at accents, so I won't do that. But, probably from London, a rich merchant man, stranded in a place where he definitely does not belong at all, and we're gonna get up to some hijinks with that, I imagine.
Okay, thank you very much. So what we're going to do for the first part of the session, which is I'm pretty much going through what's in the book here, because this is my first time running this particular variant of Powered by the Apocalypse. First things first, we're going to go through creating the characters and customizing those. For anyone who hasn't played Powered by the Apocalypse who's watching, effectively when you choose a character, you pick a sheet which is a partially pre-gen character, normally embodying a certain concept. So we have Johannes, who has picked the merchant character sheet, and we have Cheppy, who has picked the Strider character sheet. However, in this game you also get to pick a descriptor, which is like a little extra bit that goes onto your character sheet, which allows you to do additional things. We have Johannes, who has picked the Lover, which is someone who draws strength from a close personal relationship they have with their beloved. And we have Cheppy, who has picked the Creature, who is someone who is touched by the beyond, the other, the supernatural, if you will. And that allows them to, as well as showing their true form, draw on certain other powers of the beyond. So, first of all, guys, we're going to just go through the character sheets. So, first of all, there's obviously picking names for your characters, which I know is the bit that everyone loves in games. So, do you guys have any thoughts about a name for your characters?
I used a random name generator from behind the name, which is what I use all the time. I think Laren will be a good name.
Okay, Laren. And how about yourself, Johannes?
I'm going to go with Ulysses Taylor.
The next thing we have is the appearance. As you can see, there are a number of categories. There is gender, eyes, face, body, and dress. And the game encourages you to choose one from each of the categories that are listed on your sheet. Obviously, if you want to add something yourself to flavour it, you are more than welcome to do so. So, Johannes, how would you describe Ulysses Taylor? What does he look like?
Mr. Taylor has a calculating pair of eyes on him, but he has a winning smile, and he's trying to make his rather stocky body look more, to his eyes anyway, presentable with a slimming tailored coat.
So, how about yourself, Cheppy? What does Laren look like?
Laren is a very ruffled female. Like her frame is wiry. Although, except for her arms, it seems like she's had to lift up a lot of things. So she's got more muscle on her arms than would be normally proportional for the rest of her body that you would expect, because the rest of her is kind of more scrawny and wiry. Her eyes are very far away. Her face has a very cruel expression, something like butcher staring at a last piece of meat before it was chipped off and tossed into the junk pile. Like the smell of disgust is constantly in her nostrils. She's wearing an oilskin coat, which is unusually brown, probably from a hunting trip made from a...
Right, okay. The next thing to do is to allocate your stats. You should see what points you have available for brains, brawn, beauty, balance, and beyond, which is a link to the supernatural and various things that would typically be classified as folklore of the time. So feel free to allocate those as you see fit. Now, whilst you're doing that, I'm going to describe to anyone watching the special moves that your character sheets have. So, for instance, the merchant, Ulysses, has a special move called the Perks of Business. Whenever he strikes a deal involving the trade or barter, he can roll plus beauty and basically use it to get himself a better deal into the bargain. Whereas the Strider, who is a person who normally hunts out food for ships whenever they stop on an island or anything like that, does the hunting, the tracking, etc., has a special move called Innate Compass, which is basically whenever you're looking for a specific location, you can tell the GM what place you're looking for and roll with your Beyond stat. If you succeed, you'll find the place. If you're maybe a bit less successful, you might know the general direction, but you're not sure of the exact place. But it's this innate compass that makes them so very useful aboard ships, because one of the great hazards of the time is obviously navigating safely, especially when you're near the coast where there's lots of rocks, reefs, etc., that can cause ships a great deal of trouble. You should both see that there's various equipment your character sheets come with. You have all of that. Of course, we have our merchant, who has a sharpened letter opener, which can function as a weapon if needed, a box of goods. Now, you might want to start thinking about what those goods are, Johannes. Those be your trade goods or the tools of your trade, and we'll come back to you and find out what you think those are in a moment. And you have a merchant's income. You can choose to be destitute, average, or well off. Now, since you mentioned being a wealthy London merchant, I'm guessing you're probably going for well off. Okay, splendid. The Strider has a hunting knife, a silenced rifle, hunting clothes, and you have a Strider's wage, which is about sort of average for the time. Okay, now we come on to bonds, which are the relationships that exist between characters and various NPCs. Now, obviously, normally if we had a game where it was like 3, 4, 5 people playing, I'd get you to allocate one of each of the bonds to another player character. Since we only have 2 people in this game, what I'm going to suggest is you just pick one of the bonds to apply to the other PC. Now, obviously, if you guys feel free to discuss this between yourselves and get bonds that you are both happy with.
There's one I'm super interested in, Johannes, and you'll see it's you and blank once hunted a giant seal together.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That's strangely appropriate for...
Yeah, do we have like sealskin gloves or boots or from that hunt?
You certainly can have.
Yeah, your
Yes.
coat.
I would... Yeah, my coat.
Yeah, yeah.
Things are going to get interesting for Larry.
Well, I think if we went on a hunt together, which isn't necessarily Ulysses' big thing, I think we're probably friends. We could go with blank once pretended to be a big buyer to get you out of a difficult situation.
So, what was this tricky situation that Lauren pretended to be a big buyer to get you out of?
I think my stock in trade, which I would like to ask your guys' opinions on, should it be just plain old booze or a laudanum?
I'd suggest, I think laudanum would probably be more applicable in London for the sort of coastal town sort of region you're in at the minute. Obviously, booze would be more applicable. It's easier to smuggle and blah, blah, blah. So I think it depends very much on whether you want to have met Lauren in London and you've travelled here, or whether you sort of know Lauren since you got here. I think that might help to make your decision a little bit easier. But obviously, it's down to you guys. I'm fine with either.
I do like the idea of meeting in London and then traveling down together. Because like you could be the reason why I'm on the ship, because you noticed I was a strider, I was a good navigator / hunter.
Yeah. Okay, so London.
It also might tie into the fact that perhaps Cheppy, your character, sort of feels that instinctive longing for the sea. So perhaps, when your old friend Ulysses was like, "Oh, I've got this new venture coming up on the coast," perhaps you like jumped at the chance, having sort of always felt a bit of a draw towards the coastal regions.
Definitely. She doesn't know why she's good at like navigating the sea. She just is. It's kind of like a person seeking water with sticks, right? She just she points in the right direction sometimes. Like there's an unnatural instinct that comes up from time to time.
Okay, excellent. I'll scribble those down for bonds. Okay, as we said earlier, we also have the descriptors in this, and I know that you've both chosen them. I know that Johannes, you've gone for the lover, where you're you have an extra bond. You can fill it in at any time. You can change who the bond is. It normally says at the end of any session, but I'd suggest you pick someone at the start, otherwise it's not really going to come into this at all. Obviously, it doesn't have to be with a PC. It can be with an NPC, presumably someone you've met sort of in the area, otherwise, or maybe someone you brought with you on the ship. I'll leave it down to yourself.
I was thinking it's going to be a local, and I was waiting on us to discuss the setting to pick, but my idea was maybe like the mayor's daughter or something like that.
Okay, well, I've done a little bit of work on the setting, just obviously we're doing a one shot, just to get things moving. I would say there's not really so much of a mayor in the sort of the small village where this is going to take place, just due to the size of the place, really. However, there is, I suppose, what you call like an old moneyed family, which has quite a lot of interest in the area, and the person who is the head of this family, a Hercules Wainecroft, does actually have a young daughter called Verna Wainecroft. So perhaps that might be a suggestion.
That's it, yeah. Verna. Yeah,
Verna Wainecroft. Now, I will tell you, because obviously you will know this about her, because obviously you're quite close to her. Normally, she's quite a prim and proper looking young woman, although most of the village is quite a sort of poor, grotty fishing village. Like I say, her family, the Wainecroft, they're like an old, moneyed family. So she's quite prim and proper, as a lot of the well-to-do women of the day would have been. She's quite a severe-looking woman who normally wears small, round spectacles. Like I say, quite prim and proper, but you obviously feel free to define a little bit more about her, because obviously you know her a lot more than the sort of business face she puts onto the world. You would know that she's like the oldest child of the family. However, because she's a woman, she's been sort of a little bit passed over for her younger brother, Daniel, which she's really, really not impressed with. And she's always trying to sort of prove herself to her father and prove that, she's the one to like carry the family name forward, if you will.
Yeah, I think we how long have we been here?
Right, well, since you know Verna Wainecroft, you'll have probably visited this place previously, but the basic setup of the game is going to be that you're travelling on a ship that's going past there for some of your like mercantile concerns, and the ship is going to be putting in there to resupply, etc., before it moves on. And obviously you might take the time to go and visit your beloved, because while you've got a bit of shore leave, effectively.
And I don't think this is necessarily an affair that is approved of, really, by the Wainecroft family as such. They probably don't appreciate the southern big money dude coming in like he owns the place. So we're probably a little bit on the down low with Verna.
Okay, I will tell you also, because you'll probably have heard about her family, if not have actually met them, that Hercules Wainecroft is an ex-soldier who his family originally made a lot of money effectively providing arms and manufacturing arms, although he's since like semi-retired and gone into more sort of mercantile pursuits. He has 3 children. He has Verna Wainecroft, who is his oldest daughter, and he has Daniel Wainecroft, who is his son, and he has a far younger sibling who doesn't actually reside in the village. He's gone away to sort of for his education, effectively. But you know that Verna is distinctly not keen on having been passed over and is always trying to impress her father, whereas Daniel Wainecroft has always been like the apple of his father's eye, but he doesn't really seem to like fit in with the family. He's quite a young sort of bookish individual, whereas his father's all sort of ex-military, stiff upper lip, that sort of thing, and Verna's all sort of prim and proper, wants to see the family name carried on, whereas he's less concerned about that, something which causes a lot of tension between the two of them. Okay, so you have the special bond. In your heart of hearts, you know that Verna Wainecroft is your true love.
Mm-hmm. There's the sacrifice for love and test if your love is true.
Indeed. So, just for anyone watching, the make a sacrifice for love means that when the lover sacrifices something in the name of love, they roll plus beauty. On a success, they can do things like keeping their love safe. They can cause an enemy to doubt their actions. They can provide a critical opportunity, or they can give heart to their allies. They also can test if their love is true, which they find out whether the other half of their relationship feels the same way about them, or perhaps they're harbouring some secret or some doubts within their heart. Okay, so we then move on to the creature, which is you, Cheppy, playing Lauren. You're not human. You have to decide what you are. You've obviously already said that your character's a Selkie, which means we know that you're from the sea, obviously, and your true form is hidden from those around you, but you can pick 2 attributes of your true form from the list there, although if you wanted to add in some extra ones, I'm not too fussed about that. So what would you like to pick as the 2 sort of main characteristics of your true form?
Giant and fins.
Nice.
When I was looking at that, the getting into a particular place you couldn't before because of your form results. This is who I am.
Yep. And just for anyone watching, the 2 abilities that the creature descriptor gives to Lauren is that she can reveal her true form to overcome danger or surprise an enemy, and can call on other creatures like herself for aid. Both of these, one of these being a roll plus balance, the next being a roll plus beyond. Now, as I say, the opening setup for this session is that you guys are travelling on a vessel which is going to be putting in at the town of Newport, which, despite its name, is quite an old, small fishing village on the northeastern coast of England. So you guys are going to be travelling there on a ship. I'm going to ask you guys a few questions. There's no real wrong answer to these at all. It's just to find out how you guys envision your relationship with the people on board the ship, why you were travelling, etc. So, first of all, guys, the ship you are carrying on will obviously have a captain, who will be the person you will have had most interaction with, particularly yourself, Ulysses, because presumably you'll have booked passage for yourself and your friend on the ship. Or maybe, since you're ridiculously wealthy, have you just hired the ship outright for your mercantile interest? How do you see that breaking down?
That would mean I'm really rich. And
perhaps you were really rich until you spent a lot of money hiring a ship, and now you're just moderately rich.
Yeah,
you've got to speculate to accumulate, my friend.
Yeah, I broke the bank, and now I have a ship, I guess.
Okay, so you've hired this ship for your mercantile interests. What is it you're sort of currently engaged in? What are you trading in? How does the ship figure into the advancement of your mercantile empire?
I think I'm branching out. I'm in the opium trade because I have the laudanum business, but I'm branching out into other interests, I guess. So this could be maybe I had a business deal that I was going to do with a local, for which I got the ship. So I'm gonna try and ship some stuff, either from this town that we're going to be in, or beyond that. And this would be like a supply depot or just a storage house on the way.
Okay.
I don't know what that would be though.
Now, I will tell you guys that at this point in time in the 19th century, due to a lot of costly wars abroad, in order to raise money for the coffers, the Crown has basically placed ridiculous levels of tax and duties on imported goods. Now, this has unsurprisingly led to smuggling becoming quite prevalent in many of the coastal towns. I mean, people are already quite poor off because of advances in mechanisation, and they're losing jobs. A lot of people on the coast had it a little bit better, though, because if they owned a boat, they could always fish to provide food for their family and sell fish for additional money. But a lot of people at the time were quite complicit or actively involved in the smuggling trade, because a lot of them saw that, well, these ridiculous taxes that in some cases were as much, if not more, than the value of the actual goods being bought in, were ridiculous and were effectively like pricing people out of the market. So a lot of people either looked the other way or actively got involved with smuggling. Indeed, at this point in time, there were even, in historical records, incidents of towns where smuggling goods were confiscated by the legal authorities. There are reports of towns basically mobbing up and going to retrieve those goods because so many people were actually relying on them to put a bit of food on the table and make them a few extra shillings. So smuggling is quite prevalent during this time. So that may or may not have had something to do with your travel. It's entirely up to you.
I guess we could be just straight up into smuggling. I wonder which direction we're intending to go, though. Are we bringing in, or are we picking up?
Entirely down to you guys. Now, I'm also going to ask, since you know that your true love lives in Newport, Ulysses, have you perhaps bought a gift for her or some token of your affection? And if so, what might it be?
Most surely, and it's going to be an ivory necklace.
Okay.
From the colonies.
Ivory necklace from the colonies. Okay, now I'm going to turn to Cheppy to ask this question. The captain of this boat that Ulysses has hired, that you've both been travelling on for some time, you probably sailed down the Thames on it from London. Mm-hmm. You'll have been various places around the coast, but now you're putting in for supplies in Newport on the northeastern coast, just near to the border between Scotland and England. You'll probably know, since you're quite close to Ulysses, that his true love, or at least a lady who he's quite amorous with, is in this area, and he's intending to go ashore and visit her. But in terms of the captain of this vessel, who obviously you guys will have had quite a bit of dealing with, what sort of man is the captain of this ship?
One-armed.
One-armed, okay.
Very, very stout, very well experienced. He's a man who's been in at least 3 pirate raids, one off the coast of the colonies where he first met Johannes's character, Ulysses. He's also a Advent hunter, which is where me and him dragged Ulysses on a hunting trip before. That's where he got his ivory. So he's an Advent hunter who lost an arm, I'm going to say, due to a panther. So he's had a lot of experiences, but his lungs are starting to get the weakness. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of his easier job. He's settling down to an easier life of smuggling as opposed to privateering. Be that as it may, he's a very quiet man outside of that. Like, you wouldn't know he's this amazing individual until you get him really excited and he starts speaking about it. So besides that, in like normal social situations, he's a person who's he's shy, he's reluctant, especially when it's around ladies. But when it's in the context of his crew, he's very stern. He doesn't say much. It's just you give an order and it's understood that you will follow it. If it's not followed, there will be consequences, and he won't tell you when those consequences come up. So it's more of, he's a man who rules by implication, whose subtle hand, get it, the missing hand? His subtle hand can be felt everywhere, even though he himself is missing an arm.
Okay, so that's all absolutely grand. Thank you very much. You mentioned that the captain is particularly, maybe not nervous, but he's a little more quiet, a little reserved around ladies. Now, obviously, your own character being female, how does the captain respond to you? Is he still a little bit reserved around you, or has your friendship and these shared hunting expeditions meant he's come out of his shell a little more?
With me, yes. That's because he doesn't find me attractive in any way.
Okay.
Basically, I'm like an enigma to him because I'm an avid hunter, as he is. I'm a little bit more rugged. My physique isn't quite what he would consider to be an attractive form, and her scars, etc., that he knows is on her body now would also kind of be a put off. It means like she's someone who has been through crap as well. And in his mind, that's not ladylike. So he doesn't. He acknowledges the fact that she's female, but he doesn't consider her a lady.
Okay, excellent. For the final question before we get started, I'm going to turn to Johannes, but obviously, Cheppy, feel free to chip in with this. Most important thing of all, what is the name of the ship that you're sailing on?
Ooh, HMS. I think Polaris is what we're going to go with.
Okay, HMS Polaris it is. So then, guys, we begin the session with a huge storm out at sea. It's night time. The moon has disappeared behind the clouds, casting very little light. There is foam being thrown up from the sea by the heavy winds. In the distance, we can hear the sound of canvas flapping in the wind. As we pan the camera across, we can see a small village clinging to the black rocks of this craggy shoreline. Numerous rocks scattered far out to sea, as though some careless giant had just thrown them haphazardly into the water. As the clouds part briefly, allowing a single shaft of moonlight to shine down upon the fiercely stormy waters, we see a small two-masted vessel. The chipped paintwork on the side proclaims it to be the HMS Polaris. There is frenzied activity on board the deck. Sailors are running hither and thither, climbing up the various rigging that stretches between the sails and the deck, shouting to each other to be heard over the sounds of the howling wind. Stood at the wheel of the ship, barely moving despite his waterproof coat flaring out behind him in the strong wind, is the captain of our vessel. He stands there with one hooked hand and one good hand gripping the wheel. A blank, almost becalmed expression on his face. He doesn't shout like the other members of the crew. Occasionally he turns to one, nods, or shouts a clipped word in their direction. And this crew, being quite practiced, they know what they have to do. They begin battening down the sails, trying to make everything ship-shaped despite this storm. One of the crew members, slightly panicked, a little bit more green, a little bit more inexperienced, runs up to the captain. His face is covered in salt spray, his clothes are soaked through to the bone, and against the howling wind, trying to hold his hat on with one hand, he shouts, Captain! We're going to have to put in soon! She'll break apart, Captain! At which point, the captain of the vessel turns to look at his subordinate, a calm, steely demeanour about his face. He looks back up at the crow's nest and he sees a crewman looking back down at him. He gives a gesture with his good hand, and you hear a voice from the crow's nest shout, "Land ho, Captain! Newport in sight!" At which point he begins turning the wheel, and against the creaking and protesting of the ropes, sodden in this damp, wet environment, the ship begins to turn towards Newport. Now, whilst all this chaos is going on, where are Ulysses and Larian at this point?
Ulysses would probably be inside, probably in the captain's cabin, trying to enjoy or desperately make what's his name? The Green Fairy drink. Blanking out. Absinthe. Desperately trying to complete the absinthe ritual, and it's just not going to work. Like, the sugar is all over the place.
Okay, so you're sat at the long, quite immaculately varnished table that is in the captain's quarters. One of the few indulgences the stoic captain allows himself. And as you look across the room, you can see that he actually has a picture of himself painted by some unknown artist hung on the wall of his cabin with his name on like a gilt tiny little scroll underneath. What is the name of the captain of the mighty HMS Polaris?
Thomas Murray.
Thomas Murray. Okay, so you're sat in Captain Murray's cabin. Now, Larian, are you with Ulysses at this point? Are you in the cabin, or are you elsewhere on board the ship? You've come to know this ship like the back of your hand due to the amount of time you've been travelling with it.
I'm probably walking in at this point to visit Ulysses to see if there's anything I need to do, specifically because the captain at this point has everything handled. Him do what he wants until we are needed. At least that's Larian's modus operandi currently. She's probably walking in completely drenched, and for a brief time in this entire voyage, you see her smile as she walks in, as if she's relished the salt water that's sunk into her briny demeanor.
Okay, indeed, that's what happens. The door to the room opens, Ulysses, while you're sat there trying to set up this whole absinthe ritual. You see Larian walk in, absolutely soaked through to the skin, as pretty much everyone who's been on deck is. But whereas most people look quite downhearted as though the weight of the water and their exertions is weighing heavily upon their shoulders, Larian almost has the opposite effect. It's only in moments like this when she almost seems to really come alive, and she has quite a sort of a beaming smile on her face that makes her look, if not beautiful, makes her look more happy. And she walks into the room. As you look up at her, you accidentally slip with the spoon, the light that you're trying to use to burn the sugar cube for the absinthe ritual, and the spoon actually slices a shallow cut across your hand. You wince in pain and look down at the table, where you can see a small oval locket which has a tiny painted vignette of your love, Verna Wainecroft, in it. And as you look down, you see that a few specks of blood from your hand have dropped onto this locket.
So I slip with the spoon, probably because of a massive wave that just caught us, and the sugar goes spilling all over the table, and I just devil's tits, and I just set about trying to clear the locket of the few droplets of blood, and I motion for Larian to just come in further.
She'll come in hastily at this point because she sees that you're bleeding. She'll pull out like a drenched, salt-filled rag that she has from her side and then offer it to you.
Yeah,
probably stinging your hand if you grab it.
Yeah. I grab it. I wipe the locket first, and then put it on my hand. And
as you're doing this, there's a tremendous sort of aniseed smell from where some of the absinthe has spilled with the violence of the wave onto it, staining and almost starting to like peel the varnish slightly on this table. This very strong scent of aniseed fills the quarter of Captain Murray. But before you have a chance to comment on that, the door opens once more behind Larian, and you see Captain Murray stood there. He's wearing this waterproof coat and one of those large waterproof hats. There's water running in rivulets down off his clothing. He must have walked here quite quickly. You see him scratch the top of his head with his hooked appendage. He looks in the room, frowns ever so slightly when he sees the slight mess you've made on his table, but doesn't say anything about it. He's quite a reserved man. He tends to keep most of his feelings to himself. He looks across at you and says, Mr. Taylor, we're going to have to put into Newport shortly anyway, due to the storm. I might have advised that we continue on past and pick up supplies in a larger port town, but well, with the weather being as it is, I'm afraid we're going to have to put in now. We'll have to get what supplies we can and wait until the weather breaks.
Yeah, I get up and still pressing the seawater rag on my wound. I just look at Mary, just like, well, that sounds wonderful. Actually, I don't mind at all. Please, by all means, go forth and let's dock.
Larian, you notice a very slight sort of smirk tug at the corner of Captain Murray's face as Ulysses fumbles over these unfamiliar nautical terms that he's been attempting to pepper into his conversation since you began your journey on this vessel. But he quickly resumes his stony countenance and says, very good, sir. I suggest you both turn in. We'll be docking shortly. I'll give you there's nothing more to be done. My crew know what needs to be done to get us docked safely. It's going to take us a while due to the rocks hereabouts. We'll have to go in slowly, but I'll send someone to come and wake you if you wish when we dock, or you can simply wait until the morning and head ashore then. It's entirely up to you. I expect we'll be here at least a day.
Oh, I'm sure we'll make certain to restock properly, and I'll negotiate the prices. It'll be a while. But don't worry, all compensation is taken care of. Yeah, and I'm sure the crew would appreciate some shore leave as well.
That's probably a wise suggestion, Mr. Taylor, although I'm not sure what provisions you'll be able to get in a backwater hole like Newport. As I've said, I would rather we stopped off in one of the larger port towns, but well, beggars can't be choosers.
No. Good captain, it's I take it as a challenge. It is my art, much as your art is sewing whatever you need. Anyway.
Do you need any help navigating?
We're of course grateful for any help you can give us, Miss. He says, looking a little bit uncomfortable when he says Miss, but he sort of chokes, he sort of chokes it down and moves on with it, and then says, yes, we could certainly use some of your help. Although I think we're close enough to shore now that my men should be able to handle it. But if you're willing, I won't turn away an able seaman.
Be more than help. Do you need help in the crow's nest?
I could do with giving Jemmy a little rest now. He's been up there for the best part of a day. If you're willing, of course. You are both paid up guests aboard this boat, and considering the amount that Mr. Taylor has paid for the use of our vessel, I wouldn't want to presume.
And he did it with the hook hand too, so
Indeed.
it probably chipped like a bit of his clothes. So she'll take her long hair at this point, and she lets it drape over down to her breast a bit, and she'll just wrench it off to where some of the water, like some of the rainwater, actually goes down to his boots on his floor. This is payback for the woman for him not seeing her as a woman. Well, I'd be more than happy to lend a hand.
Well,
I believe he's been up there for 3 days, if I'm not mistaken. He needs some rest.
much
And
appreciated.
often do.
Much appreciated. But before you retire for the evening, Mr. Taylor, is there anything I can have sent to you in your cabin? As I say, you have paid handsomely for the privilege of travelling aboard the Polaris.
No. I wish to be alone for the moment, and I just barely register him as I talk, and I'm looking at my locket.
Very well, then. I must get back to the wheel. And he nods, turns and walks out of the room. As soon as the door opens, you can hear the of like rain cascading down onto the deck and the wind howling across the decking, and you can hear the, shall we say, the slightly vulgar shouts of the many sailors running about the deck. Obviously not the polite conversation you're used to in London, Mr. Taylor, but, well, they seem to get things done, and they know what they're doing. They're quite an experienced crew.
They have their ways, and I have mine.
Indeed. Okay, so, Larian, you presumably head up to the crow's nest.
Yeah, before I do, I'll turn back, before he leaves, turn to Ulysses. She still hasn't said yes yet, hasn't she?
What? Ah, yes. No. I mean, no.
It's not wise to say yes in your mind if it has not yet left her lips.
Anyway, I'm looking forward to visiting her again.
All right, avoid the conversation, I see. Best of luck to you.
You as well.
Thank you. Her attempts at trying to open her friend up just Vaughn try to go to the crow's nest. As she leaves, just dripping with water, and she's just smiling for the first time in quite some time. One, because she got to see both men like fumble over themselves, and they're in like a span of 5 minutes. And two, because she gets to be drenched once more in the embrace of the sea, so she will go up to the crow's nest.
Okay, you head up to the crow's nest. You replace Jemmy, who's been up there for, like, say, 3 days. He's quite grateful to be given a break. He quickly shins down and leaves the crow's nest to you. As you're peering out from the crow's nest, you can see the rocky coastline approaching. The sails have been taken in, both in part to protect them from the storm, and also to allow the ship to move at a slower pace. It can thread its way through these treacherous shoals and rocky outcroppings. As you look past them, you can just about make out what appear to be a number of small buildings, little more than shacks, really, clinging to the edge of this rocky coastline. A short distance beyond them, you can see what appears to be a shallow hill rising some distance above the town of Newport. And you can see you can't really make out the details, but you can see a slightly larger, slightly grander building on it. As the clouds drift apart for a few moments and the moonlight shines through, you can just about make out the fading grandeur of an ancient manor house up on top of this hill. And your eyes are also drawn across to a small white building with a cross on a steeple, probably a small chapel or something similar near the edge of the town, overlooking this harbour, if you could call it that. And you watch as the ship slowly begins threading its way in. However, as that's taking place, you look across to the starboard of your vessel, and you can see another vessel moving at speed, despite the fact it doesn't appear to have any sails up at the moment. It has a large chimney emerging from the centre of the deck, which is belching out black smoke, which is lost amidst the night sky. And at the speed and rate it's going and the direction it's going to run straight into the Polaris. And you can hear in the distance, with your incredibly attuned hearing, you can hear a sound that everyone else seems to have lost amidst the crash of the waves and the howling of the wind. This as this vessel moves ever closer to you.
I'll give a shout to notify the vessel.
What do you shout?
I have neighbors, so I can't shout it here, but she'll her voice will be a lot more gruff than normal. In fact, it'll sound more like a man who's probably closer to his 60s. It'll have a guttural tinge to it. She'll shout out, "Vessel on starboard side!" You know, that kind of like, raw kind of feeling.
Okay.
Loud enough so that at least you could hear it 60 paces away.
Okay, you shout that down. As you look down, you see the captain, Thomas Murray, looking directly up at you, his face briefly illuminated by the moonlight. Then with his hooked hand, he gives a savage yank on the wheel of the ship, begins spinning it round. You hear this ominous creaking of the timbers as the ship protests this rough treatment. In your own cabin, Ulysses, where you're sort of bedding down to the night, you may be thrown out of your bed and your bedclothes in disarray as the ship tilts alarmingly to one side, and you hear a lot of shouting up from the deck.
I'm just gathering myself up from the floor and just sitting on my bed, trying to listen to if it's the end of the world or it's just regular seagoing.
Okay, Larian, from where you are, you see the ship turn thanks to your warning, and literally the two vessels pass within like an arm's distance of each other, and you have a better chance to look at this vessel. It's a strange one, seeming mainly to be constructed of metal rather than wood. You can see rivets on the side of it, and you can see what appear to be large bundles. At first you're not sure what they are, but as you peer at them in the moonlight, you can see that there appear to be these two large bundles of nets rolled up on either side of the vessel. There's a number of men running about on the deck of the opposing ship. You just narrowly pass each other. You see a man standing on the deck of the other vessel. He's a bold man, quite a sort of angry looking expression on his face, and as your two ships pass, you can see him like shaking his fist in your direction and shouting something, but perhaps mercifully his voice is lost amidst the crashing of the waves. The two ships pass and continue on their way. It looks from where you are, Larian, as though the other vessel is tacking pretty close to the coastline, but it's sort of heading up the coastline from Newport, almost towards where this sort of manor house is situated, some distance towards the north. Perhaps there's another inlet up there or a cove, you're not entirely sure. Down below deck in your quarters, Ulysses, as you sort of look out the porthole of your quarters, you see this metal monstrosity passing extremely close to the Polaris, to the point where if you like leaned out of the porthole, you could probably reach out and touch the side of this other vessel. You can see salt spray being thrown up between the two of them. However, eventually the sea settles down following this near miss. The captain of your vessel, Murray, never one for the long speeches. After he's finished his exertions of steering the ship away, thanks to Larian's warning, he looks up at you, Larian. You can see his face is beaded with sweat and the salt spray. You can see he's breathing quite heavily due to the exertions of wrestling with the wheel, but never one for long speeches. He just looks up at you, raises his hooked hand almost as though in a salute, and just nods at you. And your vessel continues into Newport. The rest of the evening passes fairly uneventfully. So we move ahead to the next morning. The sun has risen, the sea has calmed somewhat, although thick heavy clouds out at sea give the impression that the storm might return at any moment. However, for the minute, the sun is out, shining down on this clear blue ocean. You can hear the sound of seagulls and various birds cawing up in the sky, and you can see what appear to be a few little fishing boats, just sort of small rowing boats, heading out from this harbour. And you can see this small collection of ramshackle huts and houses beyond the harbour.
Just, I will give basic shouts. Any necessary information noting of rocks.
Okay, no problems. At some point early in the morning, a person is sent to relieve you from your duties in the crow's nest. As you walk down again, the captain, again, not one for long speeches, just gives you another nod of appreciation for your exertions during the evening and your timely early warning, without which the Polaris may have collided with that vessel and may now be resting at the bottom of the deep. And with the sun shining down as you walk out, you can actually see down through the shallower water, you can see what appear to be the wreckage of some long forgotten boats, small rowing boats, a couple of slightly larger ships, maybe just a little bit smaller than the Polaris, so wrecked and resting on the bottom of the surface of the water.
Now finally realizing that she's cold and getting to dangerous levels, she'll grab her coat, which was tossed to the side, and kind of try to dry it off a little, putting it over. Very obviously made from a seal. She'll kind of bundle herself over it and walk down the ship.
You've started to dry off a little because the sun is shining down. Okay, so as this is going on, Ulysses, you wake up in your cabin, having gotten a few hours sleep, not the most restful night's sleep, but you can hear the shouts of the morning watch up on deck as they start dropping anchor, make sure everything's secure, making whatever minor repairs need to be made to get the ship seaworthy again.
Yeah. I'd probably get up to the deck and have my morning tea up there, just watching as we get close to the land. I'd tip my top hat to various passing sailors, trying futilely to engage with them in any sort of camaraderie.
Okay, Larry, and as this is going on, you can see Ulysses sort of walking up. Morning. You see, as he passes, everyone's sort of quite polite to him because obviously he's paying for the boat effectively. But as he walks past, you see a few sailors behind his back, and sort of looking at each other in a very funny way and sort of nudging each other, and a few of them even go as he walks past, sort of aping his behaviour. You can see that a gangplank has been put down to one of the ramshackle wooden jetties that jut out into this shallower harbour area. You can see there's a few fishermen on the dock side. Most of them are gathering nets, preparing them to put them into boats, or getting fishing rods and fishing tackle ready to take out with them. All of the boats you can see in this area look to be in a sadly dilapidated state of repair. As you're looking around at the houses, the boats, even the clothes and the demeanour of the people who live hereabouts, it leaves you in no doubt that this is an extremely poor area. Any person you can see on the dock, any of the sailors, the fishermen, you can see that there are many patches on their clothing. They've been sewn up and repaired numerous times rather than just discarding them and getting new clothing. Many of their nets show signs of disrepair. Some of the boats have hastily patched holes and damage to them.
Yeah, I clear my throat and I yell out to them, "Top of the morning, fellows!"
One of the sailors sort of looks up at you and he's like, "What's so bloody good about it?"
Well, for one, we're all still here, even though there was a horrid storm to God for. And I raise my little teacup to them and I sip.
You hear a lot of discontented murmuring, and quite a few angry looks are thrown in your direction as you say this, Ulysses, and you just about hear one of them under his breath go, "Yeah, well, some of us have to be out of it, got to make a living. Well, we can't all have fancy suits and be wondering about."
slimming coats.
You hear one of them be like, "Oh, city folk."
What's news in Newport? And I sort of like, that was so clever.
One of the sailors steps forward and he's jabbing a finger in your direction. He opens his mouth as if he's clearly about to shout something at you. Then one of the people, one of his fellows, puts a hand on his shoulder and he says, "Leave it, Fred. Leave it. He's probably here to visit the Wainecrofts. Look, we don't want any trouble. Sorry about that, sir. Didn't mean anything by it." And he starts steering his friend away from you.
That's all right. So, what's the news?
One of the sailors looks up here and he says, "Well, they're charging us more to bring stuff in, and what with the fish being depleted hereabouts, well, it's barely enough for a body to put food on the table. I got 5 kids to feed."
I think this might be time for a move.
Oh.
Now, let's see. I want to take an appraising eye towards this gentleman here, and I would like to read his thoughts.
Okay, go for it. So for anyone who was watching, reading another's thoughts is when you're in a charged interaction with someone, you're trying to establish like what their motives are and what the thoughts are behind the situation. So that's a roll plus brain.
Yep. And we're going analog, I presume?
Yes.
For the dice? Yep.
Old school.
Yep. That's 10 on the dice, and I have 2 brains, so 12.
Okay, so you can ask 3 questions from the list of options on the sheet.
Okay. My first would be, how can I get this gentleman here to collaborate with me in my smuggling efforts?
Okay, so I'll give you the answer to that. It's obvious that, like all of the people you've seen here so far in Newport, this person is extremely poor. They have a little money. The boat they're heading towards barely looks seaworthy, even to your untrained eye. Now, you've been to Newport before. You know that these people don't respond well to overt acts of charity because they find it condescending and demeaning. However, if you were to maybe buy some fish from him or buy him a drink at the local pub, that'd probably be looked favourably upon.
Okay. So I probably set my little teacup somewhere, and I approach him quite well, not right next to him, but I get up close and comfortable, and I sort of make a point of surveying the shore, and I turn to him, I take off my hat, and goes, "Say, fellow, what do they call you? What is your Christian name?"
He says, Fred.
Fred. Well, Fred, I find myself dreadfully far from a proper English breakfast, and I would like to sample your fish, Fred.
He says, "Wow, if you're looking for a breakfast, I suppose they might have some kippers on offer at the Block and Tackle, but otherwise, I ain't got no cooked fish here. I've got some bream though. I could let you have. Bought it in last night. Slim pickings though. What with the weather and everything, and while what with things being as they are." And he takes out a pipe and lights it.
Did your did you manage to actually catch anything last night?
He says, "Yeah, like I say, a few bream, but
Yeah.
slim pickings. I mean, I've got enough to feed my family barely, but I suppose we could stretch it a bit further in a stew or something. We've got some potatoes. I suppose I could let you have one of them.
That sounds wonderful, Fred. So I'll have, and I point to the ship, I'll have one of my colleagues there do the necessary arrangements. And what sort of compensation do you take for your goods?
He says, well, it's a couple of shillings ought to do it. He says it's a mighty fine fish. You won't find fresher in these parts.
I do love fresh fish, Fred.
You'll have to gut it yourself, mind.
Yeah, I go as if I would do that without actually saying that.
Okay, you still have a couple of questions left.
Yeah, I think I'm probably. Well, the thing he needs most is money or food, which is the same for him. So that's not a great mystery to me. What does he wish I do?
Okay, you're getting the impression, due to like the sort of the gruff nature and like how quickly he's trying to conclude this transaction with you, that he'd rather you just like did your business and went about your way, so proper folk could get to the day's work without being like bothered by like, rich city folk.
Yeah. Okay. So I dig into my coat pocket and I retrieve. Let's say he was talking about a couple of shillings, right? Yeah. I'm gonna give him a couple of pounds.
Okay, you hold out a couple of pounds, and he just sort of looks down at your hands and he says, "Look, I said a couple of shillings, and a couple of shillings it is. I don't need your charity, sir. I'm doing all right for myself. I'm feeding my family.
It's not
a body's got a right to make a living in the way that the Lord sees fit. We're not asking for charity, sir."
There's nothing on the list for me other than just I'll go, look, Fred. I want to give you the compensation that the crown will never give you. I understand the plight you are in. Believe me, I've been on several different continents where good Englishmen are being unnecessarily and some would say unjustly throttled by the grip of the crown.
He seems to relax a bit as you're saying this, and he seems to like nodding a bit as you're saying that.
I am, even though the good Lord has blessed me with fortune far beyond my wildest dreams, I am understanding of the plight of those less favored, and it is my place in this good creation to spread what little I have. To Fred.
He sort of
hold out that.
He takes the money off you this time, and he says, "Oh well, that's different then, sir. But I do insist you let me give you a little something extra. I mean, I can't take £2 just for the one fish, sir." And as he's saying this, he turns his back on you, rummages around in his boat, and he brings out what appears to be an unlabelled green bottle about so big, and he, looking around, he passes it over to you, and he's like, "There you go, sir."
Thank you, Fred. And it's a bit hard for me with my top hat in my in my hand on the bottle. Thank you, Fred. I'm sure that we shall resume our business at a later date. I believe that there is much to be done.
He slaps you sort of like good-naturedly on the shoulder, obviously warming to you a little bit now. You've established a bit of sort of repartee. And he says, "Well, anyway, What's your name, Fancy?
And I'm amused. I laugh a bit and I just say, I'm Ulysses Taylor, the second Esquire. But you can just call me Mr. Taylor. That is fine.
Right, you are then, Mr. Taylor. If you're looking for a room while you're about, the only rooms you'll find are in the block and tackle. Or you might get someone to let you stay in the house if you're amenable to it. Well, I hope you enjoy your stay in Newport. While he's saying this, he sort of like leans a little close to you in a slightly almost conspiratorial voice. Sort of looks down at the bottle that you're struggling with under your arm, and he says, "I'll put airs on your chest, sir."
Thank you, Fred. And I guess we said about whatever business we need to conclude before we can...
You have a bit of a chat, you resolve whatever business, and eventually he sets out on his boat. He's obviously going out in the morning to try and make up for his poor catch the previous night. Yeah. As he leaves and gets into the boat, he says, "Well, if you need anything else, sir, you just ask for old Freddie Worthington."
I shall make it my utmost priority to do so, Fred.
He nods, and then he turns around to the other fellow who's in his boat, and he's like, "Right, let's get that net stowed away. Come on, let's get out of there before that bloody storm comes back." As well, these two fish we've got ain't going to go far between the two of us, are they? Not the amount of kids you've got with your wife. Oh, dear me, no. And you'll say, "Wow, it'd have gone further, Freddie, if you hadn't sold one to that fancy geezer in the hat over there." "Yeah, whatever you mind now, let's just set out and get while the going's good." And they carry on arguing backwards and forwards. Good-naturedly, they're both smiling, sort of joshing each other, and eventually they start heading out to sea. While this conversation's going on, what is Larian up to?
Larian, during this entire exchange, as the fish starts being loaded up, she'll start grabbing the fish and preparing to skin it for him. And she was trying to think of something clever to jab at Ulysses later, at her being the one gutting his fish for him later on. Just helping out the captain with basic things. After that, she'll take a stroll along the beach side, take note of the rocks, because whenever she was looking at those ships, they started to catch her interest. There's something just about them, just seeing the ships sunken in the shallow water, that just, not that one piques her interest, but two just seems familiar to her for some reason. Okay. And so she wants to walk on.
As you sort of wander out along the shore, looking down into this clear blue water with the sunlight shining down on it, you can see as you peer down, with your quite acute vision, as you peer down into the water, you can just about make out several dark, sort of slinky, smooth shapes swimming in through the wreckage and about it. And as you look towards the north, you can see just a little distance out to the sea is a rocky outcropping, and on it are what appear to be three large seals, making that sort of barking, growling noise that seals do, almost as though they're shouting joyfully at the sunlight beaming down.
She just walks along the beach for a while. After looking at the darting shapes, she swallows some of the extra saliva that has accrued in her mouth, taking a big gulp. She breathes in the briny air, and when she puts her coat over her a little bit more, her arms are covered, and her scars along her neck are covered as well, so she actually appears far more ladylike than normal, because her most bulking features are in her upper body. So the excess mass makes her appear very willowy, and the wiriness of the rest of her frame becomes very apparent. If there's anybody walking along the shore on the side, she'll only pay a nod and try not to talk to them as much as possible.
Okay, that's fine. You do pass a few sort of ragged-looking villagers, but they largely seem intent on their own business, so it's not easy to ignore them. However, as you're getting a little bit nearer and you're getting nearer to the sound of these barking seals on the rock, although the sound of their barking doesn't change at all, there's something about it that almost sounds mournful to your ears rather than joyous or happy. You're not quite sure why.
She'll have kind of whispered. In her mind, she's talking to herself, but she's basically speaking into the air. And she hears the sea roll back, and as if she can still hear the sound of the storm, as if it's moving still along the shore miles away in the back of her mind. She'll whisper very shortly, "Why do you sound so mournful? And I would like to make a move." And that move is going to be those like me. So others like me, which basically means I'm trying to contact.
Okay, that's a roll plus beyond.
Yes. My beyond is 2, so that works. It is 6 plus 2, 8.
Okay, so you can choose one off the list.
Mm-hmm. And I lost the list. Let me bring them back up. We did that. Let's see, move sheet up and up there. Not the other one. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Computer's freaking out on me for some reason. Yeah, that's what's on the list right now because my computer's just being.
Okay, do you want me to read the list out to you?
I'm sorry, by the way.
That's fine, don't worry about it. Okay, well, I'll read you the list out. Okay, so you can choose from: they can be seen only by you and are incorporeal. They manifest as part of nature. They manifest as visions or dreams within the mind of those present, or they appear in a monstrous guise.
I would say a part of nature.
Okay, so as you're sort of muttering to yourself, why does this sound so mournful? The waves crash back towards you, and you briefly see a dark shape in the water. As the waves roll out again, you see that there is a large seal, dead, deposited almost at your feet by the waves. You can see that the side of this seal is torn open. There's these ripped, raw, red marks torn through its hide as it's deposited by the waves almost at your feet.
She looks down at the seal, one surprised, like she takes a step back. Her face, again, going from her normal disposition, which looks like rancid meat, basically, like from disgust to shock. Her eyes move back and forth to process it, and then for a brief second as she looks down with her dirty blonde hair kind of resting on the left side, just barely braided, very haphazardly. For some reason, I don't want to have you as meat. She looks at it confused, because before she's hunted seals, she's hunted whales, she's hunted various things. And for some reason, right now, at this moment, her stomach is curdling. She's riddled with disgust, and she just... Normally, whenever she found something, like her first instinct when she had to survive on her own in the wilderness was to pry it open and to see if there was something that could be used, whether it was fish or anything else. But right now, she doesn't feel like eating at all. Her stomach is in knots.
Okay, your almost sort of solemn silence is broken by a woman's voice behind you, and you hear this voice saying, I know it wouldn't be long before something like this happened. I know it, I told them.
What? What? Excuse me?
You turn around and you see a slightly wild-eyed looking woman with frizzy red hair and deep green eyes. She's looking down at the dead seal. There's a couple of other townsfolk who've obviously followed her towards where this seal is, and she's pointing down at it going, I knew it, I told you something like this had happened. What did I say? Didn't I tell you? A couple of the people are like, oh, calm down, Matilda. Calm down. There's no need to make a scene. And she's like, well, look, I knew it wouldn't end where it was supposed to end. I knew something like this had happened. Didn't I say it? Didn't I tell you all? She seems as though she may have had a little bit to drink, and as she's quite close, you can smell a little bit of alcohol on her breath. And a few people are saying, oh, all right, calm down, Matilda. Let's just go back to the block and tackle. Sit you down, get you a nice drink. You've obviously had a bit of a shock. She shakes their hands off her, and she's like, oh, I don't need a drink. I knew something like this was going to happen. And then, for no reason that you can divine, it's almost as though a great weight sort of lands on her shoulder. She seems to sag visibly. You can see some tears gathering at the corner of her eyes, threatening to roll down her face. And she stands there, so a look of combined anger warring with sorrow on her face as her lower lip trembles, and she tries to, almost by an effort of will, stop these tears from falling down her cheeks.
She will walk closer, because in avoiding eye contact with the men in the group, she will hand a handkerchief, the one that was dried out, previously the one that cleaned up the blood before, on the locket, that's now dry. To her to wipe up her tears.
She gives you a little smile and dabs the corner of her eyes with it, and then nods and hands it back to you. And then she, again, almost as though like this outpouring of emotions has sort of drained the energy from her. Again, she seems to sort of almost sag a little bit, as though some of the strength is out leaving away. She actually like staggers a little bit, and one of the other townsfolk put their hands out to sort of like steady her, and she says, "Oh, I'm sorry. What must you think of me coming over all unnecessary like this?" "Oh, Joan, I'm all right. I'm not an old woman. I don't need your help to walk around the village." At which point the man who's trying to help us raises his hand and he says, "Oh, all right, I'm right, Matilda. I was just trying to help."
See, may I ask what she'll turn to the man without looking at him in the eyes, kind of squaring over toward the cheekbone where her eyes are drawn. That way her face looks more directly at him, but she's still not being firm. Might I ask what she means by she knew this would happen?
Okay, as you ask that question, we momentarily sort of step away from that. Ulysses, as you're conducting and finishing your transactions with Fred, you can obviously hear this commotion a short way up the shore going on, and you can see Laren and this small cluster of people standing near what appears to be a dead seal. And you briefly hear like a woman shouting, and then everything goes a little bit quiet.
Right. Well, I put my hat on and I make my way over there with a leisurely pace. I'm not in a hurry.
Okay, you get there just as Laren is asking her question to this man, so saying, "Oh, what's up with this woman?" Basically, at which point he looks over at you, almost a little bit sad but a little bit embarrassed. Laren says to him, "I'm afraid Matilda lost her husband 4 days ago. He went out at night on his boat, and he didn't come back. No one knows what happened." As he says this, the woman Matilda with the frizzy red hair rounds on him. He says, "We know very well what happened. It's that damn dredger that did it. Don't tell me we don't know what happened." My husband's been going out on that boat every night for the last 5 years. Don't tell me he doesn't know these waters around here. And at this point, it's like the dams have broken. Tears just start streaming down her face.
I'll hand her the handkerchief again.
She takes it and she sort of dabs her cheeks.
She gestures as in you can keep it.
She nods at you and clutches it in her hand. You can see that her chest sort of heaving in and out as though she's trying to restrain sobs. At which point the man identified as Jonas says, "Look, Matilda, we don't know it was anything to do with the dredger. Well, the tides can be treacherous hereabouts, and well, with no moon out and that storm last night." Between sobs, she says, "My husband knew every stretch of this coast like the back of his hand. Don't go telling me that some wave or storm was able to take him down below. I know that's not the case. He's been through so many storms like that, and he always came home to me. Always."
A preacher?
The man Jonah looks at you and he says, "Wow, the dredger, that's what we call it, sir. Mr. Waincroft up on the hill, he's got some new-fangled boat that is apparently going to revolutionise fishing or some such rubbish. And there's a little inlet just up the coast, and well, he takes it out from there every night. Bloody big thing, belching smoke out of it and clanking away. Horrible thing. And well, what with it out catching all the fish, well, there's precious little left for the likes of me and well, Tilda here's got it into her head that well, that's what it did for her husband." She goes as though she's going to shout something at Jonah again, but breaks off into sobs.
I see. Was he even heading that way?
She says, "Oh well, he was heading to the cove, just about halfway between here and the inlet. He occasionally stops off there, for a bit of a rest and whatnot." As she's saying that, a couple of people like us to behind her are like, and but well, he always comes back. Well, at least he did until 4 days ago. Oh, what am I going to do now? Now he's left me all on my own. What do I tell poor Emma? At which point Jonah's like, "It's all right, Matilda. We'll look after you. We've told you we'll do all we can to help. I mean, it's what Thomas would have wanted." At which point she's still sobbing, but she sort of looks at him and like nods between like coughing and crying into the handkerchief that you've given her.
She definitely doesn't want it back.
Okay, so Ulysses, what are you making of all this spectacle that's unfolding?
So they're calling the steamship the dredger, is what I gather, yeah. Was Thomas the name of the guy who was talking about that?
The Thomas is the name of Matilda's missing and presumed dead husband.
Oh, right. And this guy wasn't named. So
Jonah is the name of the guy who's
Jonah.
Talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So I get next to him and I get his attention. And I go, "Good sir. Well, I take it this dredger ship is a new development here."
He scratches his sideburns and says, "Well, yeah, it's the last couple of weeks that it's been going out. Most people hereabouts don't want anything to do with it. Horrible, big, noisy thing it is. I mean, we've been fishing these waters for generations. And well, if it's good enough for my father and his father before him, and this is why we need a monstrosity like that. But well, that's not going to stop old Waincroft, is he? With all of his money, well, he's just brought in some out of towners to work it. Well, swarthy looking folk. Some of them, I reckon, might be foreigners."
Well, now. Yeah. The Dutch. Jonah, that was your name? Yes.
That's right.
What exactly is the ship doing? Is it fishing or?
He says, well, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but from what I gather, they say that, well, it can catch more fish than any man going out in a fishing boat. And, well, I'll tell you something, since it's been going out, there's certainly been a lot less fish hereabouts for the likes of me to catch. Most of us have just seen it at a distance and heard its bloody horrible clanking. Well, you can't miss that, and all the bloody smoke that billows out of the top of it.
And where does it go to ground?
Like I said, there's an inlet just up the coast, a couple of miles. Got like a river that runs past the old estate that Wayncroft's living at now. Round the back of the hill that his house at, and he points into the distance and goes, yeah, that old pile up there.
Right, never here though.
No, it wouldn't stay here. Well, even his boats are too good to mix with the likes of us, at which point a few people are like, yeah. Blah, 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 blah.
And I look back at the HMS Polaris, and I can't help but compare my investment to Wayncroft's modern metal-covered steamboat.
From what you know from your business dealings, if Wayncroft somehow managed to get like some sort of metal ship that can do all that's being said, he's obviously got a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you always knew that the family was well off because obviously your relations with Werner, but since your relationship wasn't exactly looked upon favourably by the family, you didn't really know how well off they were until this point.
Well, I bid you good day and wish you all the best in your fishing efforts. I shall be staying here for a while, so if you catch fish, do ask the captain of the HMS Polaris there. I will make sure that you will be compensated for your efforts. We do require restocking, so this is your time, gentlemen. If you have fish to sell, we will buy it.
You notice a few people sort of like their ears prick up at the sound of that, and a few people are like, "Oh yeah, well, I'm sure we've got. I'm sure we can like get you some supplies and the necessaries and whatever." And obviously, when you mention like, adequate compensation, that certainly seems to pique their interest. And a couple of them break off and start heading towards the Polaris.
Yeah, subsidies towards taxes. Yeah, I do my spiel with the crowd.
Okay, that is absolutely fine. So I'm going to ask, just see how successful you are with that. Could you please make me a roll plus beauty?
That's 14.
Okay, so everyone's pretty much like nodding and agreeing with what you've said. I mean, obviously the boat you're sailing on, although it is a marvellous specimen of boat, it's a more traditional boat rather than this metal monstrosity they're all deriding so much. So that seems to sort of win them over, and the fact that you're saying, oh, you can do some honest work, etc. And slowly the crowd start to disperse, all besides Jonah and Matilda. Jonah seems to be trying to, gently as he can, steer Matilda away from where this dead seal is, like back towards the village. And she tries to resist at first, but she's sobbing and she's quite clearly sort of broken-hearted about her husband, and she eventually allows herself to start to be led away.
Larian, shall we accompany these fine folk to the city center? I say as I observe the mostly not really a city center.
But we were going to do the usual there.
Oh yes, I shall be off to the Wayncrofts eventually. But
did you want me to scout a new place to store your?
Yes, quite the inventory.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you found any prospects?
That will have to wait. There's Fred back there. Fred with the fish. Seems like an excellent fellow. Appreciates the luster of gold. And
as you mentioned, Fred, Matilda, sort of, obviously having heard that, sort of pipes up again, sort of breaking away from Jonah's sort of comforting arm for a moment, and she says, "Oh, you don't want to have anything to do with Freddie Worthington. Him bloody bringing his stuff into the cove. Well, if it hadn't been for him, my Thomas wouldn't have been out there at all." And for a moment, the anger seems to have like won over the sorrow in her heart, and she has a look of fury on her face, not really directed at you so much, but sort of looking back towards the docks.
I nod along while the outburst lasts, and then I lean over to Larian and I lower my voice and I go, "Well, if this Fred is the one that makes it back out of that storm, I think he's our man."
As you're saying this, she continues, "Oh, if it hadn't been for him and Paul Murray, Thomas wouldn't have even been out there." And she just carries on ranting generally.
Sure, listen. I'd like to read another's thoughts. If that's okay. Okay. That is +1, so that's 9.
Okay, so you can ask me one question off the list. And whose thoughts are you trying to read at this point?
Just Matilda's.
Okay.
And that, just in this case, is the character telling the truth.
She definitely... You can't tell whether she's telling the objective truth, but she definitely believes every word of what she's saying.
Okay.
As far as she's concerned, it's the fault of Paul Murray and Fred Worthington that her husband Thomas was out there, and she firmly believes that it was the dredger that's caused his unfortunate demise.
See. Why would you think that?
She looks at you and says, "Well, as I said, Thomas knew these shores like the back of his hand, knew every rock, every current, where all the wrecks were, all the dangerous places. He's been coming and going up this coast in all weathers, in storms worse than last night's, without coming to any harm at all. And then, lo and behold, a few nights after the dredger started appearing, he goes out, not a sign of him returning. Not even any sign of wreckage washing up on the shore. Don't tell me that's a coincidence." Then she sort of looks at you, and again you can see sort of tears streaming down her face. And she's like, "We couldn't even find his body to bury him. We had to bury an empty coffin." And at which point she just like breaks down again. Jonas sort of puts his arms around her and he sort of tries to comfort her.
Sorry. As she looks at this, she's looking at a wife mourning her husband, and again her stomach starts turning a little bit more, as if before it was in a 3 o'clock position and now it's already gone to 9. The turns, for some reason, like her next instinct is to turn back to the seal, and she looks at herself and.
Okay.
With a slight tremor in her left pinky. Go ahead.
As you turn back to the seal and you look at it a little more closely, you can see that the claw-style marks down one side of it, which have gone like clear through the thick layer of blubber to the bone and muscle underneath. They're not sort of ragged claw marks like you might see on a predator. They're very sort of clean slices, almost as though sort of like a knife had like sliced through the side of it in several places.
I go to the body then. And I know this is she's at this point completely transfixed. Because before, because of how this woman's experience is somehow relating to her own in the back of her mind, and she can't quite put it together. Her head's starting to throb on the back. Her right pinky, is starting to have a slight tremor to it. And she'll take that same hand and try to touch the body and go up and down along those rivets. She's familiar with how animals are killed and hunted, and I'm going to try to see if I can sense intention in this particular animal's kill, as if this animal was being targeted specifically and hunted by an animal, or is this a person with a blade trying to hunting it, basically.
Okay. Now, I'll tell you, you don't have to make a roll for this. Obviously, you've got experience with hunting animals. That's absolutely fine. So I'll tell you, as you look at the seal, you can see that although the marks are very crisp and not jagged as though they've been done with some sort of metal implement or something similar, some sort of slicing blade, they're not really in a place you'd expect to find them if someone had actively been like hunting this animal. You know, you'd expect a hunter to have targeted different areas. It just looks as though something's just like raked down its side, and because of the depth of the wound, it probably died some short time later from blood loss and trauma. But it doesn't look as though it's like actively been hunted.
I see. Ulysses.
Mm-hmm.
But how many rivets are there, by the way?
In terms of how many marks are there down the side of it, there are 4 marks down the side of it.
Just enough to be a claw, but not enough to... These marks are unnatural.
How so?
And well, whenever you go to hunt for an animal, the best places to target are the lungs or the head. You want to keep the meat as intact as much as possible. The seal here, as large as it is, died from a slow and agonizing, and she'll kind of re-emphasize that words as if there's a bit of enjoyment when she says it. Slow and agonizing bleeding out. It's from trauma. These wounds are, even though there's 4 of them, they're fine, crisp. They don't have the jaggedness of a normal claw. And the marks are not anywhere where something would try to go to bite for the neck. It's as if something made of metal clean to the side.
Are you proposing? I've heard that the military is experimenting with all kinds of new black powder weaponry, rapid fire, that sort of thing.
Guns wouldn't have done this wound.
Well, I wouldn't know either way.
As you're having this conversation, sort of like looking towards Ulysses, obviously you can see past him back down towards the harbour, Larian, you see what appears to be a number of the fishermen sort of walking up the path that winds its way up the coast towards your current position. They're being led by one of the fellows you recognise was previously crowded around Matilda, and he appears to be leading a tall, sort of quite muscular, bold-looking fellow who has a bit of a sort of grumpy-looking expression on his face. And as they reach where Ulysses is standing, you hear the fellow leading them say, "Oh, look, there you go, Mr. Hess. What did I tell you?" At which point this bold fellow reaches inside his coat and he hands a couple of pennies to this man, and he's like, "Oh, right you are then, Benny." He says, "I'll tell you what, you and the boys give me a hand getting that there animal up to the estate, and I'll see you both have a shilling to share between yourselves. At which point, a few of the men who are with him start moving to pick up this dead seal.
She'll be in the way because she's still very transfixed, like trying to touch the. Go ahead.
One of the people who's not moving to pick it up sort of brushes past you, and he goes, "Oh, excuse me, miss," and he just, not in a sort of like get out of the way sort of fashion, but just bumping against you as though he hadn't really noticed you. And he says, "Oh, excuse me, miss," and he starts moving around to like try to like pick up the back quarters of this seal, while one of the others moves around to the front of it.
He braces against her muscular arm, and for a second she has to hold herself from just slinging this guy to the side. And basically, as she brushes past, she almost grips him on the chest, but chooses not to for a brief second. So she basically brushes past him, like this number.
You see his eyes sort of widen a bit, but then he sort of shakes his head, and he goes down. Like the two of them pick up this seal. And you see the bald-headed man say, he goes, "Right, you two, let's get it up to the manor house, and, well, looks like there'll be oil for the Wainecroft lanterns this evening. Like I say, get it up there quickly, and there's a shilling in it for the two of you." At which point the two men, sort of like struggling with this huge seal between them, start sort of trying to like manhandle it down towards the town, and presumably planning to head beyond it to the mansion up on the hill. This bald-headed man just sort of nods at you all, turns and like moves to follow them as though he's sort of like supervising what they're doing, although he doesn't actually dirty his own hands with picking it up.
Oh, okay.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to lean into Ulysses, and she rarely whispers. Like, she's normally a very blunt person. Would you be interested in looking in your father-in-law's investments?
Well, as I said before, it's not official yet, but yes. Speaking of which, I was hoping that you would join me and Verna for lunch.
Of course. I was just asking if you wouldn't mind if I found this cove. I'm pretty certain I could find it. I'd very much like to see this area.
Sure.
It would be rightful for storage. She tries to justify, like, in the back of her head, like, trying to smile, like a fake smile. But, like, the creases in her face and her age is starting to show. Like, it's pretty obvious at this point she's late 30s. She looks a lot younger, just mad all the time. And now it's just...
To be quite honest, if the Wainecrofts are into oil business these days, their coffers might be very full. So this might be a profitable restock for us, depending on how things go at the manor. We might be quite rich by the end.
I see. She straightens out her coat and kind of puts her arms back under the sleeves. So, like the long, so that way the willowiness of the coat covers her. Straightens her hair, and then has her face in her normal rancid meat demeanor. As ladylike as she can look. And she... Right. You must behave here, then.
Oh, okay, so are you guys planning on heading through the town up to the manor house? Is that what you're planning on doing?
Either that, or if you want to go and scout out the place, that's fine as well.
I'll go either one. Your call.
Well, I guess we can... No.
At this point, she's acquiescing to your character because you're the one who invited her along.
Right. Okay, so in that case, we'll do the manor first.
Okay, no problem. So the two of you head through this small fishing village. And like I say, it's not very large at all. You'd be surprised if there's 500 people at most in this village, just based on the number of houses there are dotted around. As you head through, you see a slightly sort of balding man wearing shabby priest vestments, with a fairly kindly looking face. He's looking down in a book, and he almost bumps into the two of you, and then he's like, "Oh, terribly sorry, excuse me," and he carries on past you towards what appears to be a very slightly larger building. You can see an old faded wooden sign creaking outside, which has a stylized carving of a fishing rod and a fish on it, and you can just about make out flaked paintwork that must have once said the block and tackle, although it now looks more like it says the ock and ackle, given the faded nature of the writing. He closes his book up as he gets to the door, opens the door. You hear the sort of brief sound of people talking inside, and then he goes in. You continue through the small fishing town, and eventually you leave it behind, and you see this shallow rising hill with a small footpath leading up to it, and atop of the hill, as you crest it, is a faded old mansion, although it looks as though there's been some recent renovation work done to the exterior of it, fresh lick of paint, etc. As you're walking up, you can see there are what would be a number of servants sort of getting on with their various duties, airing linen, etc. outside, and you can see just ahead of you the bold man and his two fellows carrying this seal, who sort of head around the back of the building, presumably to some sort of servant's entrance or something similar. Over to you.
I'm going to grab the nearest servant, and I would like to inquire as to the whereabouts of Miss Verna Waincroft.
Okay, you see an old man who you know is named Bellamy, who is one of the manservants there. He's getting on a little bit, but he's a little bit absent-minded. But he's been with the family for many years. They keep him on. He looks at you and he seems to recognise you, although, like I say, he's a little bit absent-minded. He looks at you and he says, "Why, I believe Miss Verna is in the drawing room, sir." "Yes, I believe she's working on her needlework, sir."
Grand.
Would you like me to announce you, sir?"
I would be most grateful. And my companion as well. And I turn to you so that you can say what you want.
Yes, of course. Very good, sir. If you and your lady friend will follow me. And he turns around and, like, walking slightly slowly, he looks like he might have like a touch of arthritis or something similar. He leads you into this grand but slightly faded mansion, and you're led through it until you reach a fairly extensively remodelled sitting room. You can hear there's music playing, soft classical music. As you walk in, you can see a very prim and proper woman sitting up stock straight, a small circle of cloth on one hand, doing her needlework. Her face is down, peering through small round spectacles as Verna Waincroft works on her needlework in time to this music. As you walk in, the Bellamy says, announcing Mr. Ulysses Naylor and friends.
There's a deep sigh from behind Bellamy.
At which point you see Verna look up as you're announced, and for a few moments there is a look of absolute delight and joy on her face, but she quickly replaces it with a fairly sort of stony, sort of like almost slightly disinterested look that you know she tends to wear a lot of the time. And then she says, "Oh yes, that's quite fine. That will be all, Bellamy. If you please show them in." And she gestures to a couple of stalls round this small round table near where she's sitting. "And if you please bring us a bottle of port in, Bellamy, for my guest, that will be splendid." Yes, very, very good, miss. A bottle of port, very good." And he turns around and shuffles out of the room. as soon as he's gone, Werner's demeanour changes entirely. She almost throws down this needlework. She runs over to you, which is quite a mean feat considering the corset she's wearing, and she pretty much throws her arms around you and gives you a big kiss.
Yeah, I just barely have enough time to set my top hat and booze bottle that I got from Fred down to somewhere before she flies in. I grab her in a hug. As I said before, Ulysses is kind of stocky, so he's a big guy, bear-like, I guess. And I grab her for a hug.
She kisses you passionately, and then almost as though she's only just noticed that you have someone else with you, she sort of like very gently disengages herself and like tucks a few stray wisps of her hair away and sort of straightens herself up a little bit and says, I'm sorry, and she straightens her spectacles a little bit and says, I'm sorry, Ulysses, I wasn't aware that you were bringing company with you. And she casts a slightly suspicious looking eye over at Larian.
Larian,
Yep, you go.
Larian meets it with a smile. So at this point, again, she even, there's these like really old gloves that are like used old ladies' gloves that she put on for the mansion. She's trying to hold it together, and she'll offer her hand to the lady.
Werner just sort of looks down at your hand as she's like, would you expect me to do that?
She won't do anything. Okay. Because she was realizing that that's not going to work, having no idea what to do in the most proper of situations. Her smile disengages. She'll just go to her normal resting face, which is, again, that rancid meat looking quality.
Werner looks at you, Ulysses, and says, Ulysses, if I could have a little word with you in private, please. And she sort of gestures to one side.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course. Quickly, Verna? Larian, Verna?
Charmed, I'm sure.
It was a pleasure to finally meet you.
Please, Larian, have a seat. And I grab my stuff from like the chair that I put them on. We'll be back in just a short time.
Okay,
sure.
Werner takes you to one side. Now, it's only like a few paces away from where Larian is sitting, so you can overhear all of this, Larian. Maybe that's the point. But she takes you to one side, Ulysses, and then she says, Ulysses, don't tell me you've taken up with some village urchin.
Village urchin? I don't quite... And then I raise my... Yeah. No. Larian is my navigator, my guide on these long sea voyages.
She seems quite relieved and sort of like exhales as you say that, and then she says, "Oh well, that's different then. That is a relief. I mean, what with all of Daniel's carry on recently, oh well, I'm not sure my father's heart could stand it if another of his children had fallen into a disreputable relationship."
So, I was hoping that we could have lunch, and if not lunch, then perhaps dinner. All of us?
Of course, please. And she sort of like escorts you back over to where Larian is sitting, and then
the two steps.
Yeah, all two steps of it. Yeah. But as you're sitting back down, you see Bellamy come back in. He's carrying a tray that sort of like teeters dangerously as he's holding it in his shaking hands. Puts it down. There's like 3 crystal glasses and a bottle of like vintage port on it. Very, very good, miss. Would there be anything else? But Bellamy, if you could bring in some of the small cakes, the scones for myself and my companion. We'll be taking lunch here in the sitting room. Very good, miss. I'll see what the cook has in store. Will there be anything else, Smith? No, Bellamy. After you bought the cakes, that will be all. I'm sure my father will have some duties for you to do. Very good, miss. And he turns around and he shuffles slowly out of the room. She sits back down in her chair, turns towards you. She's now all smiles and politeness towards you, Larry, and he says, "So, my darling Ulysses tells me that the two of you are travelling on board a ship together. That must be terribly exciting."
Exciting is a word. She doesn't quite know how to respond, and that's very apparent. Like, she's more comfortable with the men than she is with Ulysses to begin with, on top of everything else. This woman that she's heard about so much that Ulysses, I believe, has talked ad nauseum about at times, or at least, yes, I presume. So she's trying not to ruin things for them. Well, yes, I suppose it is better to be on the sea than merely a street urchin stuck in London. Just her natural inclination to just jab at a person still there. The words still piercing in the back of her mind. As she tries to force a smile, which comes across as aggressive. Which she's genuinely trying to be peaceful. Like, this is like trying to fit a bear in a dress. Like, it just doesn't work.
Okay, so while you're having this conversation, Bellamy comes back in, brings like a small silver tray with some cakes and some bread and scones and stuff like that on it, and some butter and a knife. Puts it all down on the table, then shuffles out. At which point, Werner offers some cakes around, spreads some butter on the bread, offers some slices of bread around, pours a port for each of you, and then she says, "So, Ulysses, my darling, I wasn't expecting, a pleasure though it is, I wasn't expecting you to be visiting for quite some time. Tell me, what happy coincidence is it that brings you to our door?"
Well, and I look at Larry and all excited and probably fidgeting with something on the tray. God saw it fit to send us a storm that necessitated a docking maneuver. I'm given to understand of complex nature.
Yes, it was a terrible storm. I believe my father's vessel had to even put in due to it, and it's the latest in ship design, quite modern, the finest crew money could buy. But even so, it was forced to set in at the inlet just behind our mansion. So it must have been a terrible storm indeed. Really? Well, then I give thanks to the Lord that saw fit to see my darling Ulysses to safety and once more back into my arms.
Thankfully the Lord saw and not that captain.
Indeed, yes. Well, I won't say that the people my father has hired for his vessel are the pleasantest of sorts, but I know that my father had hoped to employ some of the local people to crew his vessel. But, well, a number of them have quite taken against it. Why is anyone's guess? But I suppose some people just don't like change.
Change is the only constant, I fear, in our lives, such as they are.
Indeed, I've often heard my father say, and I believe it myself, that, well, one can't fight against progress. After all, if it hadn't been for companies like my father's and traders like yourself, Ulysses, promoting the interests of this great country of ours and seeing advances in science and manufacture, well then, where would we be? We'd all still be sat in mud huts struggling to light fires for ourselves.
Polite laughter. and probably a raising of the ports as well.
She raises hers and takes a dainty sip of it. As you taste it, it's extremely fine port. It must have cost a lot of money for this bottle. It's a vintage port.
I smack my lips as I taste it. So I was quite impressed with the ship, and I am given to wonder what exactly is Hercules shipping on it.
Well, it's a mechanized fishing vessel, from what I understand.
Huh. Yes.
Yes, it has some arrangement of nets and pulleys and mechanisms. I confess I understand all the technical aspects of it, but I'm given to believe that the Conqueror is quite the newest and most scientifically advanced fishing vessel in England at the moment.
It is quite the vessel, even from afar.
Indeed, you can say what you like about my younger brother Daniel, but well, he does have a flair for design and mechanics. Would that he could keep his mind confined to that and taking his rightful place in the family, rather than dilly-dallying with village ragamuffins. Well, I'm sure it'll be a lot happier.
Hold on now. Daniel designed the ship?
Yes, he's... Well, I'd be the first to admit he has many, many faults. However, what he lacks in backbone and manners, he does make up for in his inventiveness, I must say. Alas, I fear that he won't really have the stomach to lead this family into the next generation when the Lord sees fit to take my father from us, although let us hope that is not for many years yet.
To Hercules' health. And I raise my port.
She raises her port and takes a little sip with a pinky.
She's just trying to mimic like how delicate she's holding it, but like, because she's only holding it with a few fingers, right, with a few bits apart, because there's an appropriate way of doing it, and the best she can manage is that her pinky's kind of dangling a little bit down, and it's smaller cup for her big hands.
I want to read Verna in this situation.
Okay, go for it. Make a roll plus brain.
That's a 10.
Okay, so you can ask 3 of the questions during the course of your interaction.
Yeah, I only really wanted one anyway. Vis-a-vis who's in charge of the family business, what does this character intend to do?
Okay, you're getting the feeling as this conversation progresses that at the moment, obviously Hercules, the patriarch of the family, is still very much in charge. But from the way she's sort of saying, oh, she's not sure Daniel will be ready to take on the family, etc., you get the feeling that perhaps there's maybe some illness or some matter of age that she's not really going into. Perhaps that Hercules isn't long for this world, and she's trying to sort of jockey herself to be in the position to lead the family because she doesn't think her brother Daniel's capable of it. And she fears he might bring the family name into disrepute.
And just to make it official, is she telling the truth about this
Yes.
stuff? Yeah, okay. Right. So Daniel, quite the inventive young man he turned out to be.
Oh, yeah, yes, indeed. It's good to know that the high education that my father spent no expense on for him wasn't entirely wasted. Now, if he could just keep his mind to business and to preparing to take his place amongst our family when our father leaves, God forbid, that everything would be right with the world. But, well, unfortunately, like a lot of I gather, young men his age. But he just refuses to keep his mind on the job and is letting himself get distracted by all sorts of fanciful notions. No good will come of it, mark my words.
Is he dabbling into common women?
She leans across and says, well, I don't want to be one to gossip or to speak ill of my brother unnecessarily, but, well, I have heard from some of the servant folk that we employ to the estate that he has been seen around Newport in the company of a young common woman, and they seemed overly familiar with each other. Not the sort of thing that one would expect the well-brought-up son of a gentleman like my father to be engaging in. Quite improper.
Oh, of course.
Now,
of course.
Now, one would expect a person of high breeding and standing like himself to have arranged a suitable match with someone of like station and ample means. rather like my own darling Ulysses here. A finer man you couldn't ask for, a most suitable match for someone like myself.
She starts trying to hold back her laugh. Yes, indeed. A fine man.
So, is there anything else I can help you with?
Well, I should rather wish to perhaps discuss with Hercules a bit, and then perhaps we shall have... Well, to be quite frank, Larian here has a few errands of her own, and I look to Larian knowingly. Perhaps we shall meet here for dinner then.
Oh, splendid! I'm sure I can get cook to lay something on for us all. My father is suffering a bit with his leg, you know, the old war wound. But well, I'm sure he'd at least be able to speak to you for a small amount of time, Ulysses. I believe he's retiring in the parlour at the moment. But if you'll wait a few moments, I'll go and speak to father and see whether he's up to receiving visitors. If you'll both excuse me, I'll be back momentarily. And she gracefully leaves the room.
And I turn to Larian and I hope I hope you don't mind us skipping lunch now. I know that you are eager to check the cove and the inlets.
Yes.
I'm afraid that as it is, I'm not one for trekking over much. So I hope you don't mind if I don't join you.
Oh, okay. He says that disappointed. But
I shall join you perhaps tomorrow or even in the evening after dinner. How does that sound? A bit of evening time adventure.
It's fun. Perhaps you could convince your interest, we'll say. Your interests to come as well. She seems in need of some excitement.
A wonderful idea. A nighttime stroll on the beach. Let us hope that the moon is present as well.
And maybe the captain as well. Or the captain, either one. We could take her on a hunting trip. I'm sure she would enjoy that.
This is why I keep you on the payroll. Fantastic. we shall make it so.
She says that genuinely happy. And prepares to go off. Although I did want to ask her if they were interested in whaling. Such a vessel seems more suited to larger creatures.
Tell you what, I shall investigate this while you are busy elsewhere.
Thank you. And She'll take her leave, realizing she's not really meant to be here anymore. You'll get the hint finally after about 2 or 3 minutes, and kind of slowly leave as it dawns on her. She's
Okay.
Yeah.
So a short time after Larian's left, your, I suppose, fiance Ulysses returns to the room and says that a father does need his rest. He's a little under the weather at the moment, but he's agreed to speak with you. She escorts you to the parlour, and then she says, "Oh, I'll be in the sitting room when you finish, Ulysses." And she leans up on her tiptoes, gives you a peck on the cheek, and she disappears off back to the sitting room. As you look into the parlour, you can see one of those long sort of chaise longue in there, and there's a slightly elderly looking gentleman. He has a wiry beard and scarring down one side of his face. You can see there's a cane, quite a sort of fancy walking cane, leaning up against this chaise longue, and he has his leg raised up on the end of it. You can see he's wearing what appeared to be a sort of gentleman's suit, although it's a little bit shabby, and on one of the breasts are a number of military medals are pinned to it. He appears to be lying back with a cold compress on his forehead, and as you walk in, he raises a hand and says, come in, my boy. Take a seat there. Yes, that's it. Bring it a little bit closer. I'm sorry, my eyes aren't quite as sharp as they used to be."
What's his military rank? I would have made a point of learning this and addressing him by it.
You knew that he was a captain in the English army.
Yep. I take a chair and I go sit quite close to him. So, Captain Bancroft, I'm sure that your eyes are quite sharp still. What with the new business?
Well, yes. It's all been quite fortuitous, really. My son, when he went away to university, well, I paid for the finest education money could buy. I'm sure you know my family's fortune was made in weapons manufacture. But well, after I retired from soldiering, after it's a young man's game, and well, I'm getting a little long in the tooth for it. I thought that it would be nice after so many years of conflict to put my money into a more peaceful endeavour, give something back to society. And well, when young Daniel approached me with his idea for a new fishing vessel, I have to admit I was a little sceptical at first, but when he showed me his designs and talked me through it, I was quite agreeable to putting a sizable amount of money into backing the venture and having it built locally. I must confess, I'd hoped that some of the locals would see the benefits of working on the vessel, and that well I could bring some steady employment to Newport. I mean, after all, heading out on a fine modern vessel like the Conqueror has got to be safer than going out in those rickety old tubs that they take out in all weathers. And well, with the new advances and the netting rigs that we've got, so that we can harvest far more fish than they could in a few hours than in an entire day in one of their small boats. But well, unfortunately, some of them seem to have quite taken up against the idea. So I've had to bring in people from outside, from different towns, in order to crew the boat. But well, it's certainly living up to expectations.
Yes, it's quite the marvel of science.
Oh, thank
truly.
You. As
Daniel
he's saying that, he takes a pinch of snuff from a little pouch and he's like, and he holds it out to you.
Yeah, this isn't probably the first time, so I'm going to try and pretend to do that.
That's fine. As you're pretending to do that, he takes out a small brown handkerchief and he sort of dabs it at his nose.
Yeah.
And then he says, anyway, that's the business talk out of the way. And his demeanour suddenly becomes a lot more sort of stony. And he says, "Tell me, Mr. Taylor, what are your intentions towards my daughter?"
I've no intentions aside from her good fortune and health, and this extends to you as well, Captain.
Well, that's all well and good, young fellow, but I will tell you that I raised my darling daughter, and I've raised her myself since a dear mother passed away 5 years ago, but I raised her as best I could, and I won't stand to see her affections be toyed with to be another notch on the belt of some young up-and-coming cad. I trust that if you're going to be involved with her, sir, you're intending to make an honest woman of her and ask for her hand, like any good honourable gentleman would do.
Quite right, Captain. Quite right. Such is my intent. Now that we are on to the subject, I have recently secured several profitable and quite promising trade connections in London and around the colonies, and I have secured the services of the HMS Polaris, a flying vessel.
The Polaris. Yes, I've heard of a captain, a fine man. A Captain Murray, wasn't it? I believe he actually has a second cousin or something in Newport itself. I forget the man's name, but yes, I've heard of him. I take it all of your endeavours are legal and above board. I know there's some less than reputable dealings go on in the area, and well, I can't say I approve of it, not one bit. After all, I made all my money honestly, and I've worked my way up from having very little through my own blood, sweat and tears to be where I am now, and I would expect the same honesty and the same upstandingness from anyone who was seeking my daughter's hand. I'm sure we understand each other.
We do, Captain, we do. You have done much in the service of the Crown, and my only intentions, other than the good fortune and health of yourself and your daughter and your family at large, are to honor that sacrifice that you have made and further develop all of our interests in matters of commerce and trade.
Good. I'm pleased to... And he breaks off into sort of like quite a racking cough. And between coughs, as he's struggling to speak, he gestures at what appears to be a small bottle on a dresser just at the end of the shade. Long as
yeah, I'm gonna hand him the bottle.
You hand him the bottle, he uncorks it with his shaking hands, and you can smell a very strong, pungent aroma coming from it. He like waves it under his nose, and slowly his coughing seems to calm down. He puts the cork back in and just like puts it on the chaise long next to him, and he says, "I'm sorry about that. Too many strange environments in my youth. But well, the doctors tell me I'll be fine for many years yet. But it's my great desire before I go to see that my children are prepared for. Now I have no doubts of that. Daniel, of course, he'll take his place as the head of the family. I'm sure he'll do fine in that. But well, as for Verna, well, the best a father can hope for is to see that she marries well and into good stock. If you understand my meaning, sir.
I do, Captain. And John, I believe I have to roll acting under pressure because it specifically says when you're trying to hide the truth, which is that of course I'm going to do illegal shit all day.
Okay, yeah, so make a roll plus balance.
Yeah. And I think my balance was 0. No, it's -1 actually.
That's fine. What could go wrong?
That's a 5.
Okay, so in some way you're going to slip up and reveal the fact that you're probably intending to do some illegal shit. I'll leave it down to you how you slip up as this conversation's going on. The captain... sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but let's go forward. I'll try and slip it in at the best opportunity.
Okay, so the captain carries on. He says, "Yes, but as I say, I've heard of the captain of the Polaris, Maria, a fine fellow. Well, you might want to get him to have a word with his cousin. I hear that young man is falling into bad habits, if you understand what I mean. I've heard he's been involved in shall we say, a spot of creative importing, if you understand what I mean."
I think it's just going to be like, aren't we all from time to time? And I try to pass it off as a joke.
As you say that,
And
he turns towards you like stony-faced, and he's like, "No, we most certainly don't, sir. I believe that if work's worth doing, it's worth doing honestly and paying one's dues to the crown. I didn't fight all those years abroad, up to my neck in mud, blood, and my own sweat, just to have people trying to dodge the taxes they have to rightfully pay to support the army abroad and the crown's efforts in the colonies. I simply wouldn't stand for it, sir." It becomes quite animated at that point.
A jest, Captain. A jest, Captain. Speaking of your illness,
see, that's all it is.
Speaking of your illness, do you require medication? You see, I have quite the contacts in the medical circles in London, and I do carry a sizable medical inventory right now.
Well, of course, I have my wound in my leg. It does play me up something fierce when the weather is cold, but I'm able to get around with my cane. I'm told by the doctors that I have a disease of breathing that is brought on by spending too much time in tropical environments during several of my campaigns abroad. But I've spoke to some of the finest doctors money can buy, and well, they've told me that there's unfortunately nothing they can do. Although these tonics they keep giving me cost me a small fortune to buy, do ease the symptoms somewhat.
Well, I presume that some amount of pain and discomfort accompanies these difficulties.
Well, yes, of course, but a bit of pain's nothing to me. Why, I once took a sword through the gut and carried one of my men 3 miles back to our own line and walked it off with a smoke and a stiff walk afterwards, and no more needed to be said about it.
A fine hero indeed. And I retrieve a small laudanum bottle from my coat, and I set it on the table next to his other medicine.
He smiles at you appreciatively, and he says, "Oh, good idea. I'd quite run out of that. Thank you. That's much appreciated. Tell me, have you and Werner set a date for the wedding yet, or?"
I've been reticent as of yet to approach the subject, seeing as, well, we haven't had the talk yet, Captain. You and I.
At this point, he actually smiles a little, and he seems to become a bit more favourably inclined towards you. And he puts his hand on top of yours, and he says, "Well, I may seem like a gruff old soldier, but well, let me tell you that the years I were married to Werner's mother were some of the happiest years of my life. And although it broke my heart when the Lord saw fit to take her, I would not have traded any of those days, any of those hours for any money in the world. Being married to a fine woman is one of the great pleasures that the Lord gives us in this life. If I had one bit of advice to give you, son, I would say find yourself a fine woman. And there is no doubt my daughter is a fine, well-raised young woman, and settle down while you still have the time. Make the most of the time that you do have with them. I wish I had spent more time with my dear while she was still alive."
Fine words. fine words, I presume some of the finest ever to be spoken. There is a certain kind of completeness that comes to a man once he finds a true and godly woman.
Indeed.
That's what the poets say, anyway. I am not.
Indeed, and whilst I'm not much given to fanciful poetry, I feel in that regard they have at least got one thing right. But tell me, is there anything else you need? I'm afraid my medication does make me a little drowsy, and I can feel tiredness coming up on me. Is there anything else I can help you with before? With my apologies, I must ask you to take your leave, and I must get some rest.
Yes, of course, Captain. Rest assured that I shan't let any man or woman stand between your family's prosperity in the future, as well as the happiness of your daughter.
He nods and he says, "Well then, you have my." He's sort of falling asleep as he's talking. He's like, "You have my blessing, young man, but I'd advise you to hurry up. After all, Werner is quite the eligible young lady. I'm sure she could have her choice of any suitors that she."
Yeah. And I take my leave. My demeanor changes instantly when I realize that he's actually asleep. And I look at him in disdain, and just like the thought passes my head to just like spit on the man, but I just instead like switch the places of his medicine and my laudanum, so that when he reaches for it, it's going to be the laudanum that he goes for.
Okay.
And I take my leave.
Okay, so as you take your leave, we're going to cut back to Larian. So as you've left the manor, Larian, where were you planning on heading to?
I was planning on tracking down the cove, finding a decent trail that not just me could actually get through in order to get to the cove on land.
Okay, so I presume you're using one of your moves to locate it.
I'm using my main move. That is correct. The what's it called?
The innate
compass.
Okay, yes. It's a roll plus beyond then.
Smash. 5.
Okay, so you're wandering around trying to find this cove, and it must be really well tucked away. You spend probably about an hour wandering around, and you're still no closer to really finding it. However, in fact, it's starting to get dark when you're like looking for it, and after another hour, you're having no luck. You just started to think, well, maybe I'll turn around and head back. When you see what appeared to be 2 men in the darkness of the oncoming night, so walking down the coastline, hugging as close as they can to the water. You can see that carrying what appears to be a large wooden crate between them. They're being led by quite a sort of muscular man with a hooked nose. He's carrying a lantern that appears to have a hood on it, and he's got it turned so it's only casting a thin beam of faintly flickering light, and he's leading these 2 fellows with the crate. Your attention's drawn to them. One of them almost trips over on a stone, and the crate drops down a bit. The muscular hooked-nosed man at the front turns round, and he's like, "Careful with that, you 2." Yeah. "Oh, sorry about that, Paul." He's like, "Well, yeah, and keep your voices down as well." And they start slowly like moving along this small sort of worn track on the grass and the scrubland. They don't appear to have spotted you yet.
I watch my footing, because we're dealing with cliffs. Taking heed to try to diminish my trail as much as possible in case I am found and I need to run.
Yep, consider it done. You don't need to make a roll for that. That's well within the purview of your character skill set.
So she'll make her way down. As she's going, something like in the back of her mind is still her head is throbbing as she hears the shore. Like it's as if like the sound of a conch shell, but it's just resonating throughout the rest of her head. She's starting to get this mad headache, and I would like to try to sense beyond.
Yeah.
See if...
Go for it. Make a roll plus beyond.
That is an 11.
Okay, so you can receive visions or truth. So just for anyone who's watching, when you sense beyond, on a success, the GM will tell you something new and interesting about the current situation. If there's nothing more that you need to know, the GM will obviously tell you before you actually make the roll. So as you're looking at these, man, it's weird, but you can almost see like the echoes of what they've done and how they came to be here, and you have a brief impression of the two men rowing a small boat into a sheltered cove where there's crates and barrels and bottles and various other items stacked up. The cove is hidden by like fronds of vines and moss that hang down over the mouth of it. You see this hook-nosed individual climbing out of the boat first, followed by his two companions. They unload a lot of the stuff, the barrels and the crates, out of their boat into this cove. Then they pick up one of the larger crates and they start carrying it down the path. You can almost hear an echo of the hook-nosed man in the past saying, "Quick, let's get it to old Bessie at the block and tackle, and she'll see it out from there." One of the men goes, "Oh, yeah, and no doubt you'll pocket a pretty penny in the meanwhile, Murray." He's like, "Well, yeah." He's like, "Well, I'm the one who helped us get all this here. I'm the one who knows where the cove is and the way through it and the secret paths. So obviously I get the most money. But I see you right, don't I?" And one of them goes, "Yeah, well, you didn't help Thomas, did you?" And at which point the hook-nosed man turns around to him and he's like, "Look, that weren't my fault. How was I to know that the way we normally come in, that we're going to send that bloody huge metal boat out? Look, I've been trying to talk to the locals, see what we can do about it, but wow, all of them are a bit scared of old Wainecroft, you know, what with him being a soldier and whatever. But wow, something's got to be done about it, or it's going to get more than a life's worth to try and bring in things via the old ways. Don't you worry about it, though. Old Murray will see you, right?" And then they carry on down this path, which leads them to the point where you've encountered them.
She kind of falls down to half a second, or falls down to one knee, her head throbbing.
As you fall down, you hear one of the men nearby go, "Did someone hear something? What was that?" And you see him like stop, and you see this thin beam of light panning around as poor Murray, the hook-nosed man, is shining his lantern around. At this point, I'm going to ask you if you can make me an acting under pressure roll. This is a roll plus balance. Just see whether you recover yourself from the stress of this vision in time to dodge the light.
Makes sense. That is a 9.
Okay, so I'm going to offer you with this, you either falter, buckle or break. The GM can offer you a worse outcome, a hard bargain, or an ugly choice. So what I'm going to say is you've basically got a couple of choices. You can either duck back and they won't see you, but in doing so, you'll lose track of them, basically, in the darkness, because you're just having to like instinctively throw yourself behind something. Or you can keep them in sight, but they will spot you. Entirely up to you.
It's keep them in sight, but they will spot me.
Okay, so you keep them in sight. You carry on a small way down this path, and you can see they're heading towards the centre of Newport, where this small pub is that you spotted previously, the block and tackle. And just as they're getting there, though, the beam that's been panning around, as they've obviously been keeping an eye out, the beam pans directly over you and shines full bore on your face, and you hear that hook-nosed man, Paul Murray, is like, "You there! Come out! I can see you!"
She'll get up, and her hair at this point is again draping over her shoulder, as if there's something wild about it that she has to constantly keep tame and keep braided in. She'll kind of grip it as if with a fist, as if that's what it takes, and heave the mass over her back.
You there, coming out of there.
Yes, can I help you?
At which point, seeing you, he appears to relax a bit, and he says, "Oh, it's all right. It's just one of them people who came into the docks the other day." He says, "Sorry about that, miss. I thought you were with Hess. Don't you worry about it. We're just delivering to the pub. Nothing for you to worry about, miss."
Quite a time of night to be delivering to the port.
He says, "Wow. It's hard work carrying a weight like this. You just ask them to there." At which point, they're like, whatever this thing. Well, if we did it during the day, well, they'd be sweating and they'd be passing out from the heat. Do it at night, it's cooler, see, easier to carry things like this.
You're right. I mean, that's the best time for hunting as well, if you know how to do it.
I'll take your word for it, miss. Anyway, sorry about that. And he says, "Come on, you two, we haven't got enough time to be lollygagging around here all day. We've got a delivery to make." And one of them was like, "Oh, yeah, all right then." And they pick it up and they start shuffling towards this pub again.
Okay. I'll act as if my intention was to eventually go into the pub, and I'll enter the front side as well.
Okay.
Because they're going around back, so I have to enter in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you see them with the crate sort of head round the back of the pub. As you're heading up to it, you see what appears to be a young boy. You must be no more than about sort of 8, 9. So it comes out the back of the pub, and he hands what appears to be a small cloth pouch over to the hook-nosed man. At which point he opens this crate. You see there's a lot of bottles inside. He starts like passing them to the boy. He takes them inside, comes out and gets some more. And then you head around the front of the building into the pub. You can see there's quite a lot of the townsfolk in here. The fellow in shabby clerical vestments you saw earlier is sat in there. There's quite a few of the villagers around. There's a ruddy-faced woman sat in there. She's moving around everyone, sort of chatting to them, handing out some clay mugs that she's pouring various beverages into. A few people sort of like look up, and you see like looks of almost not fear but nervousness on their faces as you open the door. And when they see you, they just like relax and go back to their drinks. At which point the woman looks over towards you and she says, "Oh, just you have a sit down, dearie. I'll be with you in a moment."
And she'll quietly just sit down, nervous. But it won't show. Like, her face is probably scarier than what she's feeling on the inside, because it's complete. So I imagine it's a dim light, so you see a woman with a crook nose and very stern face sitting down, but in reality she's just kind of nervous, trying to not be.
Yeah, as you look around, you can see that this room is only actually lit by what appeared to be tallow candles. Quite common at the time. They're made out of animal fat. They give very little light, and they send out this sort of horrible smell of like singed fat as they're burning, but they're cheap basically. And as you sit there in this sort of like reeking small pub, the ruddy faced woman walks over to you and she says, "Oh, what can I get you, dearie?"
What do you have the most of?
She says, "Oh, well, I can get you an ale. We got a bit of cider in. Not much, though, I'm afraid."
Not much, I see. Do you have anything more interesting?
Well, I'm afraid we don't really get much call for fancy stuff around here, dearie. It's mostly just the ale that people drink around here. Like I say, I've only just got a few. I've got, I think, a barrel of cider left. Old Jones Farm to the west of here. Well, he had quite a good like crop of his apples in. He always likes to make a little bit of cider out any extra, and well, he does me a good deal on it. I've just had some stuff come in, but I haven't had a chance to look it all through yet and see what's what with it.
Can I have some of that?
Well, I suppose so, but like I said, well, I haven't had a look to see what's what with it yet, so I couldn't really tell you what you'd be getting, dearie.
That'd be interesting.
Well, right you are, and she heads off through a small door at the back of the building. You hear like a couple of voices talking, and then she comes back in carrying an unlabelled bottle. She pops the cork off it, puts one of these mugs down on the table, these clay mugs, and pours a small, like a shot's worth of this liquor into it. Smelling it, it smells like quite a strong whiskey.
Try some.
You tried it, tastes quite nice actually. It's just like a fairly standard whiskey. You're not sure of what brand, you're no expert. The woman says, "Oh, that'll be tuppence, love."
I'll pay the amount reluctantly.
She takes it off you, and she corks the bottle up again, puts it on a small sort of wooden table that appears to be serving as the bar, and she says, "If you want some more, dearie, just let you know." And then someone else sort of like waves a hand there, and she says, "All right, I'll be right over, hold on a second." And she heads over to the other table, leaving you sat on your own in the corner with your whiskey.
Okay. I suppose I still have like a water skin. And I'll order another one after I finish with this, and I'll take some of that and pour some in the water skin that's now empty.
Okay, when you sort of like wave your hand to attract attention to put another order in, the woman's quite busy, and you see the young man, the child you saw out back, let's say 9-10 years of age. He sort of like comes walking over to you, and he's like, "Oh, what can I get you, miss?" And he like looks up at you.
She gave me some of this whiskey that she just got in. Can I get some more of that, please?
He looks a bit confused, and then when you like indicate the bottle on the bar, he says, "Oh, right you are." And he goes and gets some, brings it back, pours you, and then he goes, Ma, what? How much are we selling this for?" She's like, "Tuppence." He's like, "Oh, well, that'll be 2 pence, sir, miss."
I reluctantly pay the amount.
He takes it, he sort of scampers over to his mother and like hands her the money and puts the bottle back on the bar.
And again, I'll pour that in the skin. And when he comes back, ask if there's anything else that I want. Just ask if they had anything, if they just got this in tonight.
He looks a bit sort of like uncertain, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, miss. I'm not really supposed to say."
It's fine. I just want to know where I could get some more.
He says, "Oh well, you'd be best speaking to old Mr. Murray. That's where my ma buys it from."
Buys it from Mr. Murray?
As he points over in the corner, he says, "Yeah, oh, Mr. Murray over there." And as you look in the corner, you see that obviously having delivered their goods, the hook-nosed fellow and his 2 compatriots stood in the corner of the room drinking.
All right, I may just need to do just that then. So what I'll do, it's already in the water skin at this point, and I'll just go over to them. At this point, she's thinking that, well, 1, this is not her strong suit, but 2, she maybe have found another clientele for her business partner, effectively for the person she's hired for. She'll just approach.
Okay, I mean, as you're approaching him, you can see that Paul Murray, the fellow with the hooked nose, appears to be in a hushed conversation with his 2 companions. They stop talking as they notice you approaching, but as you get near to them, you just catch the last bits of the conversation. He's like, "Listen, you just get a couple of the boys together, go and visit Matilda and a few of the others, round them up, tell them If they need a bit of help, I'll give it. I grew up local. See, I don't want to see the locals suffering. Tell them they'll have my help when they need it, but something's got to be done. Oh, sorry, miss, didn't see you there.
Oh yes, didn't I see you earlier?
Oh, wait a minute, that's right. You were the young lass we saw on the coast path as we were coming down. Right, you enjoying yourself? I'm guessing from your voice you're not local.
No, I'm afraid that I'm from around London.
Oh right, very, very nice, very nice. And how are you finding our little town?
It's quite nice. It's nice being next to the coast. It's relaxing. Very few people going back and forth. Being alone, quaint. It's a perfect place for hiding things.
His eyes narrow a little bit when you say that, and then he says, "Well, yeah," he says, "nice, quiet little spot it was. Well, at least until that bloody metal monstrosity kept going out. Am I right, fellas?" And he sort of like raises his glass. A few of the other locals in the pub are like, "Yeah, you tell it like it is, Paul. Ain't that the truth?" At which point, as this is going on, the door of the pub opens and a young man walks in. He heads over to the table that the clergyman is sat at. He sits down with him and they appear to be engaged in like a sort of hushed conversation you can't hear over the general hubbub of the bar area. "Well, so what can we do for you then, miss?" says Paul.
I believe you know our captain, and I mention his name. I mention Thomas Murray.
He says, "Oh yeah," he says, "old Hooky, me and him would go well back."
Yes, I believe he spoke rather fond of you.
"Oh yeah, second cousin on my mother's side. Yeah, always knew he'd go to sea. He was a good lad. Grew up locally, as it happens, before he put out to sea. Still gets back every now and again. Brings us a few bits and pieces back from his travels. Good lad, good lad." He says, "Well, will you sit down and have a drink with us? After all, any friend of Hooky's is a friend of mine."
Sure.
He sits down. He's like, "Bessie, get us some ales in, will you?" She brings them over, puts them down, and heads off. He raises them up and he says, "Well, to Hooky," and he raises his glass, chinks it together with everyone else's mug, and slurps his ale down, some of the foam running down his chin.
At that point, what she's going to do, what I hope happens, is to get him to start the... I'm going to try to manipulate another.
Okay. So that's so you're manipulating another. That's a roll plus beauty.
Which she's not good at. The gist of it is she's going to start telling a story as about when she was walking on the west side of England toward the other side of the coast. She ran into a bootlegger, basically. She ran into a smuggler back and forth, and how they became friends. And what she's basically doing is kind of rewording and just changing the facts of how she met Ulysses. So she's changing a few things around, and she's trying to get... She's telling a story as if it may or may not have happened.
Okay, so what is it you're trying to get from them?
I'm trying to incite them to start realizing that, because Murray seems smarter, that the story might be true, and to see if he would be interested to get him to start talking business.
Okay, make your roll.
2. I rolled a 3.
Okay, so as you're talking, he he's obviously had a little bit to drink while he's been in here, and he doesn't really seem to be picking up on the fact that your story might be true. He's just like, oh, you're telling me like a sea shanty. Grand. Passes the time a bit. And every time you like obliquely mention smuggling, he's like, well, I wouldn't know anything about that. He says, and he's getting like steadily more drunk as he's like drinking ales and you're talking. He says, leastways, all I'll say is, if there were anyone involved in that sort of thing around here, well, they won't be able to keep at it, at least not with that bloody dredger of Wainecroft's out and about. At which point one of his like companions like shoots him a look like, you've had too much, Paul. And he's like, well, just saying, just like shooting the breeze. No harm done. We're just all chatting, all friendly like. Like I say, well, you mark my words, that dredger will be the death of this town. You mark my words.
Why is that?
He leans across the table. You can smell like stale ale on his breath. And he says, well, way I hear it is, this boat they've got going out of the dredger, well, it can catch hundreds and hundreds of fish in the same time it'd take a normal man to catch maybe 10. Well, that's all well and good, but well, there's only so many fish in the sea, isn't there? And well, I've certainly heard around the docks that, well, people are finding it harder and harder, and they're having to go further and further out to catch fish. Well, and then there's what happened to old Thomas when he went out. Like I say, it'll be the death of this town, you mark my words.
She'll just slip in a comment. Yes, it seems like you'd have to work for him in order to be able to successfully.
At which point he like slams his mug down on the table and he says, and I tell you what, I'll be damned if I'm going to work for them people up on the hill there. I think they're better than the rest of us. Don't even come down into town and mix with the likes of us people roundabouts who've been living here all our lives and their fathers and fathers before them. Well, I think they're too good to mix us. I'd rather see myself at the bottom of the deep than be working on there. So that's why they've had to get all these foreigners in and all that, and people from out of town to like work on their boats. And why you wouldn't catch any fishermen hereabouts who'd work for him? Well, not after Matilda's husband got sent down.
Did you send him out toward the cove?
Well, let's just say that me and Thomas, we had a bit of an arrangement. Sometimes when, because we've all got families we have to look after, sometimes when I couldn't go out on the boat, he'd go out in my place. Aside from myself, he's probably the person who knew these waters the best out of anyone hereabouts. Like I say, we've both been out before on the boats together, you know, sun, wind, whatever to see through us, and we're always fine. If there was ever a man you could trust, and he bangs his hand loudly on the table, if there was ever a man you could trust, it was Thomas. And sometimes, like I say, if I couldn't go out on a boat for whatever reason, he'd go out instead of me. And well, if I'd have known that the dredger was out there and it was going to be the death of him, God is my witness, and he crosses himself, I would never have sent him out. After all, he's got more kiddies than me, and he's got more family he needs to look after. I'd rather have gone down myself for him. And well, it's about high time someone did something about it, if you ask me.
Like what?
He leans across that, and at this point I'm going to ask you to make another manipulate, another roll.
Yeah, that's fine. This is not a strong suit. In fact, I'm just trying to quickly wrap up and then let Ulysses do this afterwards. Oh, well, that was lucky. 9.
Okay, so he seems to slowly be sort of like getting what you're trying to hint at. And he says, look, all I'll say, hypothetically speaking, is if there were anyone who wanted to get involved with the import-export business hereabouts, and let's say they were maybe less than amenable to paying the taxes that are asked for, which, let's face it, isn't really taxes, it's robbery. That's what it is. Let's call it what it is. It's robbery. It's taking money out the mouths and the pockets of hard-earned people and food off their table so that it can go to people up on the hill like them Wainecroft. But let's say if there was someone who did want to get involved in it, well, there's probably some people hereabouts who could help them. And, well, I might know some of those people, but, well, we'd have to see a a token of their good intent to prove that, you know, they could put their money where their mouth is. But, well, if someone were able to provide me with that to show maybe some of their goods to me, maybe I could set up an introduction between them and some people who know people.
She'll jokingly say, "You are probably Murray's exact, or Thomas's exact opposite. Probably Thomas's exact opposite."
He says, wow, yeah, we're both very different. You know, he's got that whole strong, silent type thing going for him. And, wow, he's never been a big drinker. You know, he's got grand plans. He wants to be out on his boats and whatever. But, well, when he left, you know, and I don't begrudge him that, you know, he wanted to make something of himself. And he always remembered where he came from and his family. Like, it always brings us something back. Don't begrudge him that at all. But, well, with him gone, someone had to stay behind and, like, look after the family. And, well, that's me, innit? I'm doing the best I can with what I know and what I've got. What more could you ask of a man? I know that when my time comes and I stand before my maker and he asks me if I've lived a good life, I'll be able to put my hand on my heart, hold my hand up to him, and I'll be able to say I always did the best that I could to those that I cared for and those that meant something to me. And, well, what more can you ask of a man?
So, if someone wanted to show a bit of appreciation or wanted to talk to these people that you're mentioning, where would they go to meet you, to meet those people?
Well, you can find me in here most nights. If I'm not here, you can leave word with Bessie, and he points at the bar woman. You can leave word. So I'm quite often here, dropping her off a few bits and pieces, you know, to, like, try and make her life as easy as I can. It's not easy running a place like this with times being as they are. But, well, you can leave a message for me here if I'm not here myself.
All right. I have someone I want you to meet. If he's interested, he'll be here probably tomorrow night.
All right. Well, yeah, I'll probably be in here about same time tomorrow evening. I don't know if you've seen, but what with the weather front out at sea, it looks as though things are going to be a bit choppy for the next day or two. So I think I'm probably going to batten myself down and weather out the storm. So I'll probably be in here most nights for the next couple of days.
Yes, those seas are awful.
Oh, yeah, terrible choppy it is. And, well, and what with that bloody thing, and he waves his hand roughly in the direction of the hill. What with that bloody thing out there as well, well, it's more a risk than I'm willing to take at the minute, put it that way. Well, at least until something's done about it. At which point one of his fellas, like, nudges him and he's like, "Oh, come on now, I think you've probably had a bit too much to drink." And he's like, I know when I've had enough to drink, he says. I'm just having a nice friendly chat with this lass here. No harm done. At which point his fella's like, "Oh, all right, calm down. I didn't mean anything by it."
Says lad instead of lass.
Sorry, what was that?
He said lad instead of lass, didn't he?
No, he said lass.
Oh, he said lass. Okay.
I think that's probably just the sound on my mic, but no, he did say lass.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if that's the case, she'll smirk a bit. Say thank you. You may just see him tomorrow night.
Oh, I'll look forward to it then. He said, "Another ale?"
No, thank you.
Hope you don't mind if we do. He's like, "Go on, get him in, Rob." At which point one of his fellas peels off and starts getting more drinks in for him.
And she'll leave and try to get out of there as quickly as she can.
Okay, not a problem. You leave the pub. Where are you planning on heading next?
Well, what she'd like to do is track everything down. But at this point, wasn't I supposed to meet them for dinner as well? Or is it past that point?
You've still got time. You've still got time to meet them for an evening meal if you get a hustle on.
So I'll try to head that way to meet for the evening meal then.
Okay. So whilst you're heading back to Waynecroft Manor, we cut across to the manor to the sitting room where we have Ulysses and Werner, his beloved, sat there. You finish your conversation with her father. You head into the room. She's working on her needle point. Again, she puts it down delicately and looks up as you come in and says, I hope your talk with my father was a useful one, Ulysses.
Indeed. Let's sit down. And I motion for her to. And I take a seat as well. I grab her hand in both of mine. I go, I've just discussed with Hercules about the future.
She leans closer and she's like, yes.
And even though he is a most strict man in ways that I may not ever be able to be, I believe we have reached an accord, and he has given his formal approval of our courtship.
She looks at you, her eyes full of hope, and a small smile breaks out onto her normally stern-looking face.
Therefore, Berna, I have some things here for you. And I get down on one knee before her, and I present her the ivory necklace that I brought her.
She looks at it and she lets out a little exclamation of delight. Then she takes it off you. She sort of puts it round the neck, stands, turns her back towards you, and says, "Would you be a dear and help me fasten it?"
And I get up, having planned for this to go another way, but I get the clasp for her.
She turns back round, her face now radiant and beaming as she smiles at you. It's simply marvellous. Thank you.
And I think, John, at this point, I think we could call this testing if our love is true.
Oh, yes, I definitely think so. Why not?
Which is roll plus beyond. Of course it's beyond.
Indeed.
It's unnatural. Okay, so that's 0 for me. So, okay, let's see where this goes. As I'm rolling, Ulysses is fiddling with the ring that he has in his coat pocket, trying to work up the courage, and well, that's a 10.
Okay, so what do you say as you fall down onto one knee and you present this ring that you sort of fumble out of your pocket a little nervously?
Verna Waincroft, I'm a proud man who takes pride in his way with words, but I find myself getting tongue-tied. So I'll just be out with it. Shall you be my wife for now and ever, until death do us part?
She beams at you happily, and she sort of daintily holds her hand out so you can put the ring on her finger. And as you do, she beams at you again, this smile that seems to light up her whole face and make her look. The years seem to drop off her, and she looks the happiest you've ever seen her look. And she says, "Oh, my darling, if you had any doubt, would you have asked me in the first place?" Yes, of course, 1,000 times yes.
And I let out a breath that I didn't realize I was holding, and I rise up and pull her in for a hug and a kiss.
She hugs and embraces you, and you are filled with the knowledge that your love is true and that you have made a sacred pledge to this woman. And you feel all the nervousness and the tension that had been sort of slowly gripping your heart like a vice just floods away, and this warmth and happiness suffuses your entire being, and you know that this is a person you could happily spend the rest of your life with. You gain a +3 to your next roll. Your love is true.
Yes.
And I think, although it's a little bit timey-wimey, I think that's an appropriate point to have your companion have arrived back at the house, the manor, and in fact you walk in, Larry, and just as she's like standing up and going, "Oh yes, 1,000 times yes," and he's put this ring on her finger, and he hugs and embraces the now beaming Werner. They don't even seem to have noticed that you've walked in, so engrossed are they in each other's love.
So, if you've ever seen in movies, like where the floor just kind of caves down and there's like one little ridge left and they're hugging the wall from their back to try to inch around it, that's the same way she's trying to get around the room slowly because she doesn't want to disturb anything. She has no idea how to deal with this particular situation.
Okay.
Because this is what... Oh, she just kind of goes around them, slowly, like inching across, makes her way to a seat, because I'm assuming they're near a sitting area.
Yep.
Basically behind her and him.
Okay, as they disengage from hugging each other, Werner seems to have spotted that you entered the room for the first time, and you likewise see your companion, Ulysses. Werner turns to you again, this beaming smile on her face, which previously was so stern, and she holds out her hand towards you, Larry, and you can see this ring on the hand. What does the ring look like, Ulysses?
It's I think it's a plain gold band with a small ruby set into the band.
Nice. So that's the ring you see on her finger. She holds a hand out towards you, Larian, and she says, "Oh, you were the first to know the happy news, Miss. Ulysses has asked me to be his wife, and I've said yes. We're going to be married." And she beams again, this brightly dazzling smile.
She smiles. Her face is filled with relief. She gives a glance at her friend as in, "You finally manned up."
Ulysses is completely oblivious to whatever is implied.
Yeah, she tries to give a jab at him, but it doesn't work. She just reciprocates the happiness presented to her with a smile, but somewhere deep under her stomach turns to the 11 o'clock position. Her stomach is even more in knots.
As you're doing this, you hear from the door to the sitting room, you hear a rapt knocking on it, at which point Werner turns towards the door and says, "Who is it?" And a slightly gruff voice says, "Begging your pardon, miss, it's Hess. Your father seems to be sleeping. I didn't want to disturb him, but there's some important news. I thought I'd best bring it to you, miss. It's about your brother, miss." At which point she turns to the two of you and says, "Oh, please forgive me. I should probably go and Hess works for my father. I should probably go and speak to him." And then she turns to you, Ulysses, and says, "Of course, as my future husband, if you wish to accompany me, you are more than welcome. I will have no secrets from you."
But of course.
And she turns towards you, Larry, and says, "Okay, my apologies. Please excuse me." And she heads out of the door with Ulysses. As you get out there, you can see this bold, sort of muscular man. As you can see him through the door, just as it shuts, Larry, you recognise the guy who was supervising the moving of the dead seal earlier on. Here, as the door shuts, you obviously can't really hear what they're saying, but Hess, this bold, muscly, quite severe-looking man, looks over at Werner and then looks a little bit suspiciously at you, and he says, "This is family business, miss. Probably best not to be said before outsiders." At which one Werner says, "Mr. Taylor here is my future husband. We will have no secrets from each other. Anything you can tell me, yes, you can tell him." He said, "Right, very good then, miss. You asked me to keep an eye on your brother, make sure he didn't get himself into any trouble down with the townsfolk." "Yes, is there a problem?" "Well, I've been keeping a close eye on him, but keeping myself out of sight like you asked me to, miss. But, well, I've, much as it pains me to do so, I've come to tell you that, well, the rumours are true. He's got himself involved with one of the village women. Seen it with my own eyes." At which point, something more of the more sort of severe sort of manner and this sort of calm, sort of almost mask falls over her face, and she says, "Well, that is troubling. You say you've not been able to speak to my father about it." "No, miss. I went in to try and ask his opinion of it and what he wanted me to do, but well, it seems like he's mixed up his medications again, miss. And well, he was fast asleep, miss. I couldn't wake him up no matter how I tried. Although I checked on him, he seems to be all right, just in a deep sleep. But I thought I'd best come over and see you, miss. Well, I'm obviously disappointed, but Daniel is a grown man making his own decisions. Although I'm sure it will break my poor father's heart. But I always said he didn't have the stomach for running this family in the style that it should be run. But my father wouldn't hear of it. After all, as far as he was concerned, Daniel was his golden boy. He couldn't do any wrong. Well, we'll have to see what he says once we tell him about this. It's worse than you think, miss, I'm afraid." "What do you mean worse, Hess?" "Well, I'm afraid you know that woman who lost her husband a while ago out on the sea and blamed it all on the Conqueror." "Yes, I know. All rubbish, of course, but I had heard." "Well, it's her daughter he's been seeing, miss." At which point she sort of straightens herself up a bit, and you hear a soft sigh under her breath, and she says, "Well, thank you for telling me this, Hess. There's no need for you to follow him any further. I'll of course take this tragic news to my father. I'll plead with him for my brother's sake that he not do anything drastic. But well, I know how terribly disappointed my father is going to be when he finds out that there's the threat of our noble blood being diluted by dallying with common stock. But I'll see to telling him, Hess. It will be better coming from me. After all, I am his daughter." "Well, right you are, miss. Just to let you know as well, I've heard some rumblings in the village. There might be a bit of trouble. Well, apparently someone's been stirring up the locals about the Conqueror, and well, let's hope none of them do something stupid." "Well, you have men guarding the Conqueror, don't you, Hess?" "Yes, of course I do. Like your father asked me to, miss." "Well, make sure they're all armed and they're all vigilant, and everything will be just fine. If they get themselves into trouble, that's their business. As long as we protect our interests, that's fine. We're not doing anything illegal, after all." "Well, right you are, miss. I'll go and see to the arrangements right now, and I'll leave that matter of your brother in your hands." "Yes, very good, Hess. But thank you for telling me. I'll speak to my father, and I'll see you're adequately compensated for your services." "Well, thank you very much, miss." And he stomps his way off. At which point Werner gives a sigh, and she turns, and she has quite a sad look on her face, turns back to you, Ulysses, and then says, shall we try and put this whole mess behind us until my father wakes up? Let us go and have an evening meal with your companion."
Very good, very good. And I shall do my part in clearing up these matters, given that we are where we are now, Verna. It shouldn't be your burden alone to do so.
Okay, now whilst this conversation has been going on, Larian, you've been obviously sat in this this parlour, effectively, which has a window looking out of the side of the manor that sort of oversees the town. And as you sort of happen to glance through it, you see what appears to be a large group of people, probably about 20, 30 people, so all heading up the path from Newport towards the manor house. And as they're getting a little bit closer, you can't make out what they're saying, but you can hear like angry shouting and sort of the rumblings of conversation from them.
I'll give a sigh. Something familiar about this. Her stomach turns a bit more, a bit uneasy. I'd like to sense beyond.
Okay, go for it. Make a roll plus beyond.
That would be 8.
Okay, as you're sat there, again, you see almost an echo like you did previously, but this time you get the sense it's not an echo of something that has happened, it's an echo of something that may happen in the future, but it's fragmented and broken up. You see a vision of a crowd of angry people stood outside the front of the manor. There, you can't hear what they're saying. You can see this dull roar, almost like flames, but you can see them all like shouting and sort of shaking their fists, and you can tell from the expressions they're absolutely furious. You see the frizzy red-haired woman Matilda at the front. She's shouting and pointing her finger. Then your vision shifts and you see the bald-headed fellow who was just Hess, who was just talking to Ulysses and Werner, stood out at the front. You see him holding what appears to be a small black powder pistol. It jerks back in his hand. There's a puff of smoke. Then you see him like lying on the floor with like loads of feet and like hands punching and kicking him. And then you're back in the parlour. But you can still smell the, almost like something burning, and you can hear flames in your ears for a few seconds after the vision fades. And as you look up, you see the door open and Ulysses and Werner come walking back in.
There's a crowd of people from the town coming in.
I look to Werner, as if to ask, why?
She looks at you and says, I have no idea. I don't believe my father had any meetings scheduled. I would go and try and wake him up, but if what Hess says is true and he's mixed with his medications again, I'm afraid he's getting a little absent-minded in his old age.
I shall go see if Hercules is up to the task.
Okay, you head through into the room where Hercules is still on the chaise long, his arms like falling down by his side. You can see like the laudanum bottle like lying on the floor next to his open hand. As you enter, he sort of opens his eyes and like very blearily looks at you. His face is like a little fallen, as though he's having trouble sort of focusing on you. And he's like, "Oh yes, Mr. Taylor. Tell me, have you made an honest woman of my daughter yet?"
I am going to... Is there any laudanum left in the bottle?
There's a little bit, not a great deal. As he's talking, you see slurring his words, and a part of his face appears to be like hanging down, a little bit of drool running out the corner of his mouth.
If he did the entire bottle, he's in a bad way. Well, because they're like medicinal bottles, right? So they're not that big.
No, they're only like
yeah. Right, so I'm going to give him some more. So I fetch another bottle. This is my main cargo. This is my crate of goods stuff. I fish out another couple of bottles of laudanum, and I sort of go like to check on him and just grab him by the jaw and just feed him the laudanum.
Okay, no problems. You feed him the. Okay, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm just going to have to look up the effects of laudanum because I'm not entirely sure what they are myself, having never imbibed it myself.
It's just opiates. My intent here is just give him way too much.
Okay, that seems to revive him, although he gets an almost sort of like manic expression on his face. And he's like, "Oh, Mr. Taylor, what's going on here?"
Listen here, Hercules.
That's Captain Hercules to you, boy.
Captain, yes, Captain. There's word that some people from the town are approaching, and I have a bad feeling regarding their intentions, and we need you to be present.
Well, fine. Pass me my cane.
Okay, and then I make a show of helping him along. So I basically carry him out if that's what he needs. But I give him the cane and help him up.
Okay, you start helping. It just takes a little bit of time because he's a little bit doddery. But and he's sort of like moving in like a slightly jerky, uncoordinated fashion, unsurprisingly. Okay, while that's going on, back in the parlours, still looking out of the window, Larry, you see Hess, this bald-headed man, sort of gets halfway across the yard in front of the manor. Then he obviously spots this mob approaching him. You see like Matilda break out of the front of the crowd, and you see like her face is absolutely etched with hatred, and she's like, "It's their fault that my Thomas died. That them and their damned machines taking our livelihood, reducing us to scrabbling around in the dirt, and then they had to take a good man from us as well. They caused him to..." And like a few other people are like shouting as well. As this is going on, you see Hess reach down to his belt and he pulls out this small, quite sort of old looking and like quite sort of badly maintained looking pistol, and he just like points it generally at the crowd, and he's like, "Look, we don't want any trouble. Oh, just go back to your homes. Nothing bad has to happen here. Look, the Waincrofts ain't doing anything illegal. Just go back to your homes, and I'll do my best to try and persuade the master that nothing bad has happened." As he says this, someone like throws a brick at him out of the crowd, and they're like, "Oh, go on, why don't you go and bloody get back to your masters, dog of the Waincrofts that you are." And this like brick just goes like tch, and like hits him on the side of the face. As it hits him on the side of the face, he falls backwards, and as he does so, his hand quite instinctively just like grips the pistol that he's holding. There's a and smoke flares off the side of it as he falls to the ground, the gun clattering out of his reach. There's a few moments silence as everyone's sort of like checking themselves and looking around. Then as you're watching in the moonlight shining down, Matilda sort of turns so like you can see, you can just see this red spot spreading out on the front of her chest. And she collapses to the ground. You see Jonah and another man sort of like cradling her as they're like trying to help her, and they're trying to like put something over the blood and try and mop it away. They've obviously got no medical training. They don't know what's going on. They're panicking.
We need to leave. I'll grab her hand, and I will try to run down and use my internal compass to try to know toward the ship is.
Towards your ship or towards their ship?
Their ship.
Okay, make an internal compass roll.
That is an 8.
Okay, yeah, you know the way. They've talked about this inlet so much and it being just behind the hill, you're pretty sure you can find your way there. As you come out leading Verna with you, you basically cross paths with Ulysses, who's leading Hercules Waincroft, who's like looking a little bit worse, wearing a little bit spaced out, but he's walking with his walking stick. As you sort of cross paths with him, he's just saying to Ulysses, he's like, well, bit of a stiff upper lip, that'll put them back in their place. I know how to deal with people like this. We had to deal with shirkers like this in the army all the time back in my day. And he's waving his cane about. As you're sort of crossing across Ulysses, you see Larian leading a slightly confused and bewildered looking Verna out of the parlour. She's like pulling her along quite quickly.
Larian, what is going on?
They killed the big guy.
At which point Verna goes, oh my god, not Hess.
They killed Hess, yes, that one. Let's go.
At which point the captain goes, oh, damned if they have, and he sort of like hefts his walking cane almost like a club. He's like, I'll give them a damn good seeing to. We don't stand for any of that behaviour. Hess was a good man, damn it. And he starts like striding towards the door, as like, waving his cane.
Yeah,
I'm leading Verna away.
Okay, so you're leading her. So I stand there for a while, looking after you, and then Hercules. And I yell after Larian and Verna, like, I'll be right down. I'll just make sure that Hercules is okay.
Verna's still being pulled along by Larian, which she sort of like looks in your direction, holds out a hand towards you, and she's like, oh, be careful, my love. And then she's like dragged away by Larian.
Get over here!
And you lead her away, that's absolutely fine. Out of like, and obviously she can like guide you through the house as well, like out of the back door, through the servants' entrance. Meanwhile, Ulysses, you sort of like trot and catch up with the captain as he heads out the front of the building. As you get out there, you can see Hess lying on the ground. There's a dead woman. You recognise Matilda, a sort of red hair now stained with blood. Like two men are around her, and the rest of this crowd have obviously been like riled up into murderous intent by the sight of one of their villagers being shot. Are they just kicking the shit out of Hess? He's like lying on the ground trying to cover his face, and they are just curb stomping him, but good.
Okay, I'm I'm gonna be behind Hercules. I'm gonna wait and see what he does.
Okay. The captain Hercules Waincroft, possibly not in the best of minds, given how tanked he is at the moment.
No. Overdose of blood on him.
He basically steps out and he bangs his cane loudly on the back of the door, causing a few people to like look up in his direction. He goes, "Unhand that man!" At which point, a few of the villagers who've been like kicking the shit out of Hess do sort of start back a little bit, although they quickly seem to like be regaining their courage when they see it's just like a spaced out old man holding a cane. At which point they're like, no, we're not going to unhand him, he's murdered one of us, murdered her in cold blood, he did, we all saw it, yeah, we all saw it. And they're all like obviously riling themselves up again. You can see that like Hess is sort of like he's sort of flopped backwards a bit. He's like pulled his hands away from his face. You see like bruises are already starting to break out on him, and there's blood like from various cuts as he's like. You see like just a short way away where it fell after he dropped it. There's this discharged like flintlock style pistol. Looks like an antique, probably never been used before now. Not really been like maintained well or anything. You see the crowd are starting riling themselves up and they're starting to like press forward. One of them goes, why don't you and your lot go back where you came from? Leave us in peace. We don't want none of you. None of you dredger. No more people dying. None of you shooting people. Go on, get out of it. All that. And one of them throws a brick. It hits the sort of masonry just to the left of the captain's head. He sort of like ducks a little bit, like a little bit too slowly. His reactions obviously aren't up to much as he's like about half a second after the brick hits the masonry. And then he turns back round. You hear him sort of like make like a noise under his breath, and he like hefts his cane almost like he's holding it like a club, and he starts striding as best as he can towards these people, like waving his cane around. He's like, "You get out of here if you know what's good for you. I don't take for any of this sort of behaviour. This is England, god damn it!"
I'm going to. The crowd doesn't really need any more incitement, right? They are doing that fine on their own.
Yeah, this every time like they seem to be like calming down. Someone like shouts out something about Matilda or like someone else who died because of the dredger or they're losing their livelihood and it riles them up again. It's like a self-fulfilling cycle. They're just feeding off each other's energy and riding themselves up even more. You know, having like seen riots in London, that it's only going to be a matter of time before someone does something else stupid and this whole thing is going to go to shit. If it hasn't already.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out if there's a move to make here. Well, let me put it this way. By my estimation, based on what you just said, would it be quite safe to assume that they're going to lynch Hercules pretty damn soon? Yeah.
You're getting the feeling that they're more intent on lynching Hess at the moment, but certainly if like Captain Waincroft gets in their way, they're not going to be above dealing with him as well.
Yeah. So what's going to happen is I'm gonna join the captain and just like assure him that I'm gonna be here with you when we charge the breach one last time.
He's like, good man, one last glorious charge against the enemy for Queen and country.
For England. And I just try to like get him up, and
it doesn't take a lot to rile him up.
Yeah. And I basically just shove him ahead on his charge if that's what it takes.
Okay, yeah, he starts striding towards him, like waving this stick. Now, you as like a dispassionate observer, looking at him, he's not going to last long against this angry mob. I mean, he's laudanum up to the eyeballs. He's already got like many a war injury, and he's like limping because he's not using his cane to like support himself. So he's gradually like listing over to one side as he's approaching them.
Yeah.
And he starts striding towards them, waving his stick like a club. At this point, one of the people at the back of the crowd shouts, "Oh, he's murdered Matilda. We know how to deal with murderers here." And you see someone like hold up like a rope that they've like made a noose out of. He's like, "Yeah, lynch him, hang him up." At which point they start heading forwards. Now, given the fact that the captain's moving quite slowly, they get to Hess beforehand. They drop this noose over his neck and tighten it, and they start like pulling him by this noose. He's like, it's like dragging him backwards into the crowd. The captain gets level with the crowd as they're doing this and lashes out with his cane, more through luck than any sort of skill. He like hits one of these people on the side of the head and they like stagger to one side, having taken a glancing blow. At which point everything seems to pause for about half a second, as though they're not really sure what to do as this old man sort of wades in. But then the fellow who's been hit on the side of the head just turns around and just like punches him round the side of the face. At which point he just goes down like straight away, like onto the ground, and the rest of them just start like surrounding him and again start like stomping him and punching him. You see he's on the back, shouts something, and like another like rope appears from nowhere.
And I retreat back to the house and try to follow Larry and Verna.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. For the sake of moving things along, I'm going to say you catch up with the two of them just as they're leaving out of the servants' entrance of the manor. So as you're leaving, Larian, with Verna in tow, you see Ulysses like running through the house and like out of the back entrance towards you.
And somewhere along the way, I take my letter opener and I like slice myself on the cheek a couple of times, and I smear the blood a bit on my cheek. And as I catch up, I go, "Just keep going, keep going."
Oh, my darling, whatever have they done to you?
Never mind that. Never mind that. Just go. We have to get to safety.
What about my father?
I just shake my head.
At which point she lets out a sort of wailing sob as you say that, but she's still not resisting being pulled along by Larian.
I'm dragging her. Practically.
Okay, not a problem. As you're dragging her away from the manor house, you looking, since you're at the back, Ulysses, you look back and you see what appears to be the figure of the captain and Hess are dragged out by the crowd. These ropes are slung over the thick bough of a large tree by the side of the estate, and as you watch, the two of them are hauled up bodily by this crowd, and you see them both sort of like hanging there, sort of jerking as they're hung high by this angry mob. There's a lot of shouting and the sound of smashing of wood as some of them break into the actual manor house. Then a few moments later, as maybe someone knocks over a lamp or something, you see the flickering of flames inside the manor, and then you're all sort of over the hill and away from it. Maybe about half an hour later, you arrive at this sheltered inlet that you've managed to remarkably find in the pitch black Larian. As you look back towards the manor, you can see thick smoke now rising as it burns. As you get nearer to the inlet, you can see this large metal, almost like steamship, the Conqueror, sat in this inlet. There's a group of swarthy looking men who are swabbing the decks, etc. And you can see what appear to be some very rough looking individuals sort of standing spaced around it, obviously on guard of the vehicle.
So, Larian, where are you leading us?
The ship. You'd have to face the mob the other way.
All right.
After all, you wanted to see your father-in-law's investments.
Ah, yes. Yes, I did. Seems so long ago now.
Do you mind comforting your fiancée so she's not a wife, so she's not as blithering? We need her to be, she needs to be intact by the time we reach that ship, otherwise we're not going to be able to get on.
Yes, of course. And I'm gonna
She's not looking you in the eye. Sorry.
I'm gonna try to talk with Verna and get her together enough for us to approach.
Okay, you're gradually over the course of several minutes able to like calm her down to the point where she's not completely together, but she's sort of putting on a good show of it. She's like collected herself a little bit.
And Ulysses genuinely empathizes with her, and it's quite clear that he's torn about what just happened. On one hand, yeah, that's exactly what he wanted, but on the other, it's no small thing to lead a man to his death. And he's by the end, there's several tears rolling down his cheeks as well. But yeah, so Verna gets some hold on herself, and we proceed.
Okay, you all head down to the boat, the Conqueror, or the Dredger as the townsfolk have nicknamed it, as you get there, you're met by one of these stern-looking guards who sort of steps up as though he's about to challenge you. Then he sees Werner and he sort of straightens up a little bit and says, "Oh, Miss Waincroft, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware you were coming to inspect the facilities." And she, obviously making an effort to like keep herself together and stop her voice from trembling, says, "Yes, I've come up here with my new husband, Mr. Taylor, a merchant of some renown, and his guest. I'm sure he can give you the details of the arrangements and what we're looking to do on the Conqueror." And then she sort of like turns away quickly. It's like she's worried that her voice is going to give out. At which point the guard turns to look at you and he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Congratulations, by the way."
Oh, what? Oh, yes.
On your impending nuptials, sir.
Ah, yes, of course. We should like to go for a small journey
Well, it's
on the Conqueror.
I dare say we could do it. So it's a bit irregular though, and well, to be honest, I'm not sure we could safely get the Conqueror out of the inlet at this time of the night. What with there being not very little light, and it's quite a narrow inlet. We normally take her out at twilight when there's enough light to see by. Not sure we can manage it.
Well, I have in my employ one of the best, and then Ulysses struggles with the words.
As he's saying this, you're almost not paying attention to this, Larry, because you're a little bit distracted by the fact that a small way out at sea, just beyond the edge of this inlet into what must be the open water, you can just about hear the sort of barking cry of several large seals who perhaps have made their home amongst the rocks on the edge of this inlet.
She'll traipse a little too close to the edge, not paying attention to the conversation.
Okay, as you peer down this sort of narrow and quite treacherous inlet, you see what the guy's saying is true. It will be very difficult to sail this boat out of here at the moment. But as you're looking down, you can actually see on the rocks, just at the very edge of the inlet, before you get out into the open sea, what appear to be a number of these large seals swimming about, coming up on the rocks, excitedly barking between themselves. You can see
get us out.
You can see as you say that and your eyes still on these seals, you can see that they appear to have no trouble at all with the rocks around. They're just expertly swimming in and out of them, jumping up on them.
Okay, so I don't need to read a situation because I already know what the best way out is. It would be underwater. It would be directly in. So yeah, she has an idea. So I can get us out of here. We need to get out of here.
Yes, splendid. Shall we be off? I say to the guard.
Well, I don't see how you're going to help us get out of here, but well, if you can find us a safe course through, and he looks over at Werner, who just nods back at him, not trusting herself to speak, perhaps. He says, well, if you can plot us a safe course out of here, yeah.
Of course, I can. I'm a navigator, after all. That's the word you were looking for, by the way, Ulysses. Navigator.
Ah, yes, navigator. Wonderful at that.
And as you're saying this, you're all sort of like bustled onto the deck of the Conqueror. You're sort of shown into like the navigation room where there's all manner of charts, etc., of local waters, and the sailor who's escorted you on board says, Well, those are all the maps and charts we have for this area. Pressure's a lot of good they'll do you without any light to see by, though.
So, at this point, she looks over the charts for a brief second, just to pay lip service to it. Start the ship.
Chef makes like, stoke her up! And you hear someone shout below deck, oi, oi. And a few moments later, there's this that starts getting faster and louder, and as you watch, smoke starts billowing out of the chimney on deck. And the ship, the Conqueror, slowly starts moving through this inlet with the sound of creaking metal plates.
As the ship starts going, she'll make her way toward the bow of the ship. Or, actually, sorry, I forget my nautical terms. It goes to the front. She'll go to the front of the ship. Toward the right. That way she can traipse off the current once she reaches the water. She'll bring Ulysses with her.
Mm-hmm.
I'll need you to follow my lead once I'm in.
Yes, of course. Whatever you say. I trust you completely in these matters.
Okay. I don't think you completely understand what I mean by in.
I just... Zero comprehension.
Yeah. She starts hearing the ocean in her head one more time. Memories have been coming back to her this entire trip. The closer she is to the sea, the more she feels like herself. Do you remember when you pretended to be a buyer of medical supplies whenever they wouldn't let me out of the hospital?
Yeah.
Remember the doctor said something was unusual about me, that I wouldn't be able to get out.
I seem to, yes. I presumed that was... Are you ill?
Well, they wanted to put me in a sanatorium.
Nonsense.
But you helped me out. So I guess now it's time to repay the favor. What I'm about to do is the "This is who I am" move, which assume you already assumed. So, John,
Yep.
One of the results is you find a new way out from your new form.
Yep.
So here we go. That is a 10.
Okay, so you can choose 3 options from the list on the This Is Who I Am move.
All right. So the 3 options, just so you know ahead of time, are you're immune to harm for a single act.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's important when I'm next to a ship's pillar. All right. You discover a way out in this case.
Yep.
And then also, I reveal a new opportunity created by the form. I have no idea what that's going to be, but
okay, no problems. So, in your form, you will have no problem leading the ship out through the inlet. So I'm going to turn the narration over to yourself. Describe how that goes down.
So I'm assuming she's actually coming out along with the captain of the ship from the side, coming out to actually see who the 2 people are supposed to be steering the ship going. As the captain approaches, she'll say the words, "Just follow my lead." She's at this point standing on the railing before jumping over. And I'm sure Ulysses is freaking out, a little bit concerned at this point.
Ulysses is like babbling about how he has access to medical supplies. If you are feeling quite unwell, there's something we can do. And please step off.
I'm feeling better than I ever have, she says. And
it's wonderful to hear.
You know, I used to have a husband. He beat me senselessly. I ended up killing him in a fight.
I'm terribly sorry. That must be horrifying.
Terrible.
I say completely honestly.
Something about you and her have brought back these memories. It reminded me of something about myself I've forgotten. And as those words come out of her mouth, her voice starts taking on a deeper tone. The words have long forgotten, and the skin on her coat, the seal skin, starts wrapping and constricting tightly around her, to the point where it starts elongating and going over her face. Creases. It's an undulating mass, twisting as if a body that is tied before it is shipped out and tossed over the side of a boat. The warping of the coat itself, as if ringlets of rope are forming around it, as if to hold the mass together as everything is broken down and then rebuilt up. Parts of her skin and her arms start shedding off. Bits of muscle and sinew start being apparent before they slip under the skin one more time. What forms out of it is a giant, elongated, slender, maternal object. In the bask of the moonlight, as she plummets down, the arms that were once muscular turn into giant fins. The back of her legs form together to form a fin and kind. She becomes a seal. A very big one. The splash of which could have easily covered 12 men. And through the ringlets of it, you can see through the humps. The last words were, "Follow me once I'm in, bring back in the mind." And she leads the way out of the cove.
Indeed, and as this huge seal, the shimmering of its coat as it crests the surface, illuminated by some moonlight breaking through the clouds, as it leads the conqueror out of this inlet, you see that it is joined in the water by the small herd of seals that were playing on the rocks, and this mass of shiny, supple bodies glinting in the moonlight lead the conqueror safely through the rocks and the perils of the inlet out into the open sea. And as for the something unexpected that was going to come out of your revealing your true form, as the conqueror sails out into open sea, and you know that your friends, Larian, are safe for now and they're beyond all harm of the mob on shore, you look over at the ship, sort of planning to head towards it. As you do, you see the heads of all of these seals bob up out of the water near to you, and somehow you know without them speaking that they're planning on moving on from here to another more safer place. And even though no words pass between you, you get this impression that they're looking at you, and you almost hear this familial voice in your head sort of saying to you, like, "Oh, you don't belong with them. Why don't you come with us? That's their world and their troubles, not ours. Why don't you come with us and be free?" And these seal heads wait. They're sort of bobbing up and down as though they're awaiting a response to you from you.
She'll look up for fear of almost doing a Free Willy reference. I don't mean that. She'll look up before dipping back under the water at Ulysses and Verna.
Okay, so Ulysses, as you and Verna are stood on the side of the ship, you look down and you see this giant seal, which was once your friend. You see her sort of like looking back at you, and then back at these seals, as slowly a couple of the seals start sort of peeling off and sort of swimming out in the opposite direction to you, towards more favourable waters. And for just a few seconds as you look at this seal, you can see the uncertainty on its face, its eyes still looking like the eyes of your friend.
Still the same burn scar on the back of the neck.
I raise my hat. I just throw it in the air and wave.
And then she plummets into the sea, and to never be heard from again.
Indeed, and as this happy school of seals, now with a new member to replace the one that they lost previously, swim off to the north towards happier waters for their kind, and the Conqueror sails south, itself heading into somewhat uncharted waters, at least for Ulysses and his betrothed Verna. The future for them uncertain, but for the moment safe, and at least they have each other and the love they feel for each other. As the two part ways and drift apart into their separate futures, that is where we are going to end this session, gentlemen. Thank you very much for playing. I hope you all enjoyed it.
Yep, very much so.
Yep.
And for anyone who is watching, that was a playthrough of Alas for the Awful Sea, a Power of the Apocalypse game focusing on the conflicts and the hardships of the 19th century coastal villages. It's a very interesting game. If you're at all interested in something a little bit different genre-wise to Powered by the Apocalypse games, I suggest you give it a try. So thank you very much for watching. As always, guys, I'm happy to chat for a little bit afterwards, but for now I'm going to end the recording. So to anyone who's watching, take care, and hopefully we'll see you all soon. Goodbye.